and to begin on his defense enhancement, Iron Dome, things like that.
Yeah.
So that's what the Senate does. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. The Freedom Caucus has said, look, we don't care whether it's one or two bills, but it needs to be started now because we need to get the president needs. So again, whether it's one or two bills, we don't care. I do agree with the speaker. We need to have this done by summer. I think we can do it. But if we go with one big bill, what we're doing is we're seeing roadblocks in the House. That's the problem.
So in other words, if you go with one big bill, you've got people in the House who are saying, no, I'm not going to sign that. I'm not going to support that because the salt increase is not in there, for example. Or no, I'm not going to support that because you're not cutting enough spending and the offsets are not there.
That's right. Well, those are complicated issues. We will resolve them by some. The question is, will we resolve them by 2 or 3 weeks from now? And I think we're not going to. So again, the House needs to decide. Are we going to do something quickly? If not, perhaps the Senate approach is the way to go. So
it sounds to me like you've resigned to the fact that the reality is it's got to be 2 bills.
Well, again, I was a little disappointed in the House Budget Committee. If we don't move on a bill this week, we are weeks behind schedule, and the president needs money for that border security.
Great point. You're absolutely right. I mean, now you're talking about this week. It better be done this week. Meanwhile, while the president has had an incredible number of wins in the first 3 weeks, he's digging into these tariffs. I want to get your take on this. It's going to impose a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports today. And my sources tell me that tariffs on Europe are very close behind, that he's going to do a reciprocal tariff on Europe, and that will include a VAT tax applied to the tariff because Europe charges us a VAT tax. That's going to be announced later on this week. Here's White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller with me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures. Watch.
The president is making clear that we are going to pursue a policy of reciprocity. In other words, if we're getting charged 30% by Europe, then we need to charge them 30% in return. If they want to be charged less than 30%, they're going to have to lower.
When you hear music like this,
Were there barriers so that it's fair and equal and, yes, reciprocal treatment? Here's another area where Europe is engaging in predatory practices. Tech companies are subject to digital taxes, censorship, and onerous financial penalties that are tens of billions of dollars every single year. Obviously, that has to go into the reciprocal treatment as well. You cannot have a situation where our country, our auto companies, our tech companies are just a piggy bank for Europe.
Yeah, and now China is already retaliating, sir. Chinese tariffs on about $14 billion worth of U.S. goods take effect today. That range is from 10 to 15%, impacting crude oil, liquefied natural gas, farm machinery, and other products, Congressman. And by the way, you just heard Stephen Miller talk about what Europe does in terms of digital taxes and all this other stuff on our tech companies. China's not far behind because there's a good story in the Journal this morning. Here it is. China's strategy in trade war threaten U.S. tech companies. First line, officials in Beijing building a list of potential targets of antitrust probes, hoping to influence tech executives close to President Trump so he backs off on the tariffs. So we got it coming from all sides, Congressman.
That's absolutely right. The president has made it clear that, again, there will be reciprocity, just like Miller said. I mean, look, if Europe wants to hide its tariffs under the guise of VAT taxes or, again, going after tech and digital, we have to uncover that, and we have to, again, begin a discussion about rolling those back.
Yeah, and by the way, we haven't even talked about this USAID, whatever you want to call it. I mean, all this money, $2 million for sex changes, LGBTQ activism in Guatemala, $6 million to fund tourism in Europe, $4.5 million to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan. Wow. Congressman, were you aware of this money that is being paid out from USAID?
We suspected for years that there was basically a RICO deal going on in USAID, that there was gross corruption, there was conspiracy to hide where this money was going, and thank goodness that Elon Musk has found the paper trail for where that money was going. It infuriates many Americans, and they deserve to be infuriated over this.
Yeah, we all are. Congressman, good to see you. We'll be following your work, sir. Thank you.
All right, so that's.
We're back.
I have the live stream going on Rumble, the simulcast for X Spaces for the call-in. I've also set up both versions of the live stream on my website through Rumble and through YouTube. So if you want to see the dashboard, you can watch that on my website or through YouTube. And again, the live stream through YouTube. I have also updated X with all the links. So for the ones that are just joining on YouTube live stream, thank you for showing up. This is DrPaulCottrell, and we are recording and doing the live stream on February 10th. I'm going to be reposting these videos after the show for people that are overseas or for ones that can't watch the show while they're at work. Please join the call-in. It's supposed to be interactive. That's the whole point of the show. And help support the work that I do. Make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. I have X, 2 channels on X, and I also have 1 on GETTR. We just did a great show last night with John Hogue. There was a great call-in that we had. People ask questions. It was very, interactive. That's the whole point of the show. So I'll be reposting that live show that I had last night, tonight, tomorrow, and the next day on the different channels. So stay tuned for that if you missed it. Ask your social media to follow my work, all right? And it's really important that I create more followers. Every time I post on YouTube, I lose subscribers, all right? Now, I'm accreting subscribers on Rumble, Bitchute, Brighteon, on X, but YouTube does censor people like myself. I'm not the only one. There are many people that get censored. So please help support my work by making sure you subscribe and asking your followers on your social media to subscribe to my channels. Again, I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please subscribe to all of them because I get different strikes on YouTube and I have to, shift the streams, the live streams. I was live streaming the other day about USAID corruption and the live stream shut down right in the middle of the stream. So there is serious censorship on YouTube. Please go to my store and get the great products that I offer to help support the channel, but also to help to support your health. I partnered up with Rainbow Herbals and we've developed these great deodorants for males and females. You can get it in citrus or you can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. These deodorants are very high quality. They're made from essential oils from the Himalayas. They have no aluminum in it, no baking soda. It's a dual purpose product. You use it as a deodorant for males or females, but it also detoxifies your body. So please go to my store and get the citrus or the peppermint version, very high quality. Get a couple bars for your household, help support my work, and help support your health. Another great product that I have to help support the channel and to help support your hygiene is the structural nanosilver soaps. Currently, I have in stock the charcoal tea tree. So please get a couple bars for your household. Help support the work. Very high quality. It's made from structural nanosilver. No fancy chemicals like you'd get from Procter & Gamble. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. For any order, you can get a discount. Use discount 5, all caps, number 5, and you get $5 off. If you buy an anti-aging box or a longevity box, the box is designed to be cheaper than the individual products. So if you buy an anti-aging box or a longevity box, it is cheaper for you. And you can add the discount 5 on top of the anti-aging box and the longevity boxes and get further savings. So I've done a lot of things on my store to be able to package and stack the different supplements to improve your health at different price points. So please go to my store and get healthy. All right. With that said, let's go to Bloomberg.
Eddie, happy congratulations Super Bowl if you are an Eagles fan.
Happy congratulations.
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
I watched the whole thing, I understood it, and now I'm super into football. I know everything about it.
And your
So,
take on the
this is my Clinton of Landman, a la Paul Sweeney. My take is that the Eagles were awesome and the Chiefs didn't come to the Super Bowl. That they stayed home.
pretty good.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you think
Defense from the
Kelsey's
Eagles.
past his prime at this point?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know that. I don't feel like I know
Do you
enough
think
football.
Taylor still like embraces
him now?
him?
I do, because I think deep inside she's still good. Okay. Anywho, I digress. Happy Monday. I'm Alex Steele, alongside John Tucker. Paul Sweeney is off today. Nora Melinda joining us for the next 2 hours, and we have a lot lined.
For the ones that are looking at the dashboard, the live market telemetry, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,063. The VIX is trading at 16. The Euro USD is trading at 1.03. Oil is trading at $72 a barrel. Long Bitcoin ETF, BITO, is trading at 22.66. And the USD Japanese yen is trading at 151.61. Now, it's important to mention, like I've said, when you look at risk building up in the equity market and even in the international markets, looking at the USD Japanese yen is a major bellwether for me. For years, actually 2 decades, I have looked at the USD Japanese yen as a signal, a potential signal where stress is building up in the system, in the international markets, that could affect equities. You can see that the Japanese yen strengthening. That's a sign that stress is starting to build. Now, it doesn't mean that it's imminent, but it's building up. VIX is low, so for today, the equities are going to trade up. But when you have this Japanese yen strengthening and the VIX spiking, that's really bad for equities. All right. Now, another sign is oil. All right. And oil's going up a little bit. Now, oil has been trending down since the election, since Trump took office. But today it is up at trading at $72 a barrel. So right now we have stress building up in the system internationally, but not too much. So today should be a rally for equities, barring that no other crazy thing happens, and anything can happen throughout the day. But at this moment in time, equities it's that the stress that's slowly building up internationally has not translated into the VIX, and therefore equities are moving upward. All right. With that said, let's go to Bloomberg again.
Interesting.
So if you put them in in a big jar and you take it to a bank, and you can you're surprised at how many pennies you line on.
This is true.
Just saying. All right, JT, thanks a lot. I'm Alex Steele, alongside Nora Melinda. Nora, first of all, happy congratulations, because that's what I'm going to start saying for the rest of the 2 hours. She was born in Philly, so you are very excited.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
Okay.
We won.
You won.
We won.
Are you a big sports person? She's not.
I'm not a big sports person, but
I don't really care about football. The whole football thing was a total. It's all bread and circus. It's all bread and circus. It's a waste of time. All right, so I want to. Let's go to Fox Business about this inflection point, once in a lifetime opportunity.
Welcome back. President Trump says he will be imposing a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports today. My sources also tell me to expect tariffs on Europe announced this week with a reciprocal VAT tax applied to it. That should be announced either Tuesday or Wednesday. Here's White House Deputy.
All right, Bloomberg is going back to real news here.
14%, or aluminum, as some people say. Steel firms are also higher, Cleveland-Cliffs, U.S. Steel. So Trump also said he would announce reciprocal tariffs this week on countries that tax U.S. imports, and this would be enacted almost immediately. That's what he said. But of course, we know that he's threatened a series of tariffs as of late, and he's rescinded some, he's paused, he's delayed, so we really don't know. But the U.S. relies on aluminum imports from a lot of countries to meet the vast majority of demand. So this is kind of big news.
Right, lots to dig into there, but what are you keeping an eye on in terms of the corporate side?
McDonald's.
Okay.
I know a lot of people love McDonald's. So sales rose in the fourth quarter, but get this, it's after the growth of its international business that made up for the decline of the sales in the U.S. So global same-store sales climbed, and in the U.S., though, they were a weak spot, so they saw a steeper decline than analysts were expecting. So guest counts grew, but their average ticket price declined. So I guess more people were going, but they were buying less stuff. Maybe like instead of 5 chicken nuggets, just 3 pieces.
And it's interesting because people say that when you travel, you should always check out different McDonald's across the world because they have different menus.
Whoever says that?
Everyone.
If you go to McDonald's, like,
Why are you eating McDonald's? First, it's terrible for your health. It's way too high in calories and fat. I mean, and it's too expensive. The quality of the food sucks, and it's too expensive. I'm telling you, the biggest thing, one of the biggest things that Americans should do is just stop eating fast food, and just watch the stocks plummet, and the shareholders are making you unhealthy, get all upset. Oh my God! Just stop eating fast food.
So saying that the deal raised questions about why Hyatt would pay $2.6 billion to buy real estate when we know investors are really rewarding companies that have asset-light strategies. So
That's
remains to be
interesting.
seen.
Yeah.
Maybe they're seeing something we're not.
All right, and also if you go all inclusive, then you can't go to McDonald's. So
That's what your
I
priorities
see
here.
this stressor here. All right, Isabel, thanks a lot. Isabel Lee, Bloomberg Cross Asset Reporter. So again, happy congratulations for all you Eagles fans. If you're a Chief fan, I'm real sorry. I really don't know what happened there to you because now I saw the Super Bowl, so I'm obviously now a sports expert. Joining us now is Brian Edgar, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Gaming and Lodging Analyst. So super fun for me. Understood the game, which let me tell you, it's taken a really long time to do that. But I can imagine this kind of blowout isn't great for sports betting.
Yeah, it's a lopsided victory, maybe not the one that fans or that sportsbooks expected. So
it's just stupid. It's just stupid news. It's just noise. All right, let's go to Bondi.
So as President Trump's mass immigration enforcement continues, a leaked document is detailing a supposed plan by federal authorities to conduct a large-scale raid targeting illegal immigrants in Los Angeles.
This is interesting. The Los Angeles Times has obtained a leaked internal federal document detailing the plans. The outlet reports that the planned raid was going to be such a large-scale operation that ICE agents were also going to be joined by the FBI and DEA. With this raid supposedly set to happen before the end of the month.
Trump's administration is starting to express frustration over these leaks. Newly sworn in Attorney General Pam Bondi has issued a clear warning last night for those responsible.
If anyone leaks anything, people don't understand that jeopardizes the lives of our great men and women in law enforcement. And if you leaked it, we will find out who you are and we will come after you. And it's not going to stop our mission. It's not going to stop the president's mission to make America safe again. We were very clear with the lawsuit that we filed in Chicago that if you don't follow the law, you will be prosecuted by the Department of Justice.
So this is the latest news. It comes after Trinidad gang members were allegedly tipped off in Colorado just last week ahead of a raid planned there. And raids in Chicago were also delayed last month after another media leak.
Well, between the leaks and the handful of Democrat-led cities still trying to hinder raids and deportation efforts by declaring sanctuary city status, we'll continue to see how President Trump's deportation efforts unfold. But as we see these stories about how apparently there are leaks coming from inside, it looks like the Department of Homeland Security or ICE, Just goes to show you, some people are not on board in those departments with the president's plan.
So annoyed by this. I come at it from two prongs. First of all, you gotta find out who the leaker is. They gotta be prosecuted. The badge needs to be stripped. If they're part of the administration, they should be banned from working from any type of administration going forward. But number two, and maybe this is just a personal standard because of my connection with law enforcement, I don't think it should be printed. It puts their lives at risk. Maybe that's just a personal view, Carly.
No, it's a bigger
You
issue.
gotta understand
It's a
it's
way
a
bigger.
deal.
It's a way bigger issue. You cannot have subordinates within these agencies thinking that they can go against the actual edict of the president. The president gave them an order. It's a lawful order, and they need to follow the order. Them stonewalling, them slow walking, them giving information before the raid not only puts the officers at risk, but it's circumventing the actual command from the executive branch. This is the reason why.
So we're talking about
This is
because
the
we're
reason
talking
why
about criminals here.
This is the
During
reason why.
President-
This is the reason why that Trump's first term was not as successful as it could have been, because you had a lot of people pushing back where they really didn't have the illegal authority, but he had close insiders that weren't. They were stonewalling and slow walking and not providing the real transmission from the president to the ground workers of the agencies. When you cut off that transmission, it doesn't work very well. And that's what happened in the first term. Now he has a good transmission from his close cabinet and insiders within his circle. The problem is now the workers on the ground level don't want to do the job.
Interview with Brett Baer, the Super Bowl one that aired yesterday. Brett asked him, what is success? How do you unite the country? And he says, the way to unite the country is through success. And getting criminals out of this country who are here illegally is what success looks like. And last week, you mentioned it in what we were just
Not
doing.
that.
There was that
Not that.
in-
You have agents or workers within ICE or within the Homeland Security Agency giving a heads up to illegal immigrants and gang members. These workers then in the agencies are aiding and abetting.
Aurora, Colorado, they were expecting to arrest 100 gang members and criminals. They only arrested one. And Bill Malusian was on that ride along with the ICE agents, went into the apartment complexes in Aurora and said there were no migrants in them, but there were blood on the apartment walls. And that is all you need to know about who is in this country that the Trump administration is trying to get at, but there are these leaks that are preventing that from happening and also putting the agents' lives in danger.
Well, here's the thing. When a news outfit gets a story, you know, we're a news outfit. We want to print what's going on. Invariably, they will ask the agency, hey, there's a story going on. Sometimes the federal government will say for national security or personnel security reasons, can you hold off on that because we're worried about the well-being of the people who are going to be involved. Obviously, that has not happened. But then again, the leakers might not be inside the federal agencies involved. It could be local police. It could be somebody at one of these sanctuary counties or, you know, entities who do not want this program to happen.
Even if it was outside, even if it was outside workers, outside of the agencies that were tied to, let's say, city, municipalities, or whatever, it's still aiding and abetting. They're aiding and abetting and circumventing the actual executive order to get rid of the illegal immigrants. So they should be charged for aiding and abetting an unlawful individual being in this country, especially if they are a serious criminal. I mean, some of these people that are trying to deport have killed people, that have stolen, they're part of gangs, they're part of a drug ring. I mean, come on. They're aiding and abetting. They should be prosecuted.
these new polls out, a majority of Americans are happy with the way Donald Trump is
Over
following.
60%.
He's following through on stuff he said he would do, and the raids are part of his plan.
That's right. And Pam Bondi put the leave her on notice, whoever it is, whoever they are, we're gonna go after you, we're
Yeah,
gonna
she should.
prosecute you, and we're still gonna get the job done at the border.
Yeah, damn right. That's the way it should be. See, what it is they feel as though they can circumvent the executive order and the executive branch. See, what's happening is you have the cities and the states and, even, just individuals within certain law enforcement agencies that want to push back, but they don't have a right to push back. That's the thing. They don't have a right to do it. Their job is to follow the order. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Max 14. And with the Max 14 or the Max 35, you swish it in your mouth, take a teaspoon, take a teaspoon of the Max 14, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 30 seconds, 20 seconds, and then swallow. What that does is it improves your oral hygiene. It's going to neutralize, and it's also going to improve the barrier and improve the mucosal lining. So that means that you're going to have a better epithelial barrier. Epithelial tissue will be healthier in your mouth and also in your oropharynx. When you do that, you're going to have you're going to be boosting up your immune system. You're improving your innate immune system. So I take Max 35 or Max 14 every day. All right. I usually take the Max 35, but if I have more in stock for the Max 14, I'll take the Max 14. But the thing is that taking it every day is really important. I take a teaspoon a day. Now, if I'm not feeling well, I'm going to take a tablespoon or 2 a day. And again, you just swish it in your mouth, gargle 20, 30 seconds, and then swallow. And do that. And then once you start feeling better, then you go back to a teaspoon a day. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Max 14 or the Max 35 to help boost up your immune system. Now, I have 4 pillars for the core of this health protocol, and then you add other supplements to it. The first pillar is the Max 35 or Max 14. Boost up that innate immune system. Now, the second pillar is C60, which is a very strong antioxidant, so you're soaking up free radicals and reducing stress on your cells and your tissue. The third pillar is to bring down inflammation, taking turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. By bringing down chronic inflammation, you're boosting up your immune system. And the last pillar, boost up your metabolism, increase your energy levels. When you have more energy and your metabolism is better, you're slowing down the aging process. Not only that, you have the energy to be able to help your other organ systems. And your immune system needs a lot of ATP. Your brain needs a lot of ATP. So when you start to age, guess what happens? Your mitochondria ages and you have less energy. When you're young, you look at someone that's really young, right? Like a toddler or, 1-year-old or 2-year-old. They're always running around. Why? Because they have a lot of ATP. Now, when you look at someone that's old, they're just sitting there rotting away in a chair. Why? Because they have very little ATP. So please follow my advice because I am 100% right on this. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Max 14 or the Max 35, boost up your immune system, and help support the channel. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off.
Well, first, when you think about tariffs, there's 3 issues to think about when discussing tariffs. First, the on and then the off again nature of the across-the-board tariffs on Canada and Mexico is likely to result in companies delaying, decisions on supply chain, just capital investment and so forth. So that's not good for Q1 or Q2 GDP. because capital spending, which we know outside of AI-related CapEx, is only grown about 3% in the United States. I think second point about tariffs is that this new reciprocal tariff announcement is in its objective very similar to the border adjustment tax proposal that back in 2017, border adjustments were paired and symmetric, which essentially sunk Paul Ryan's congressional leadership in Trump's first administration. Moreover, the problem with Trump's imposition of tariffs is that it's another encroachment of executive power on the authority of Congress. I mean, it used to be that tariffs were legislative, highly debated, deliberative. What we're seeing right now is, two things from this movement towards border adjustment tax, rather than it being a national emergency or security that could be made with steel or aluminum, is that they're going to be subject to challenging the courts. Not to mention that the lack of deliberation in Congress makes almost every evening for us, potential market moving event, depending upon the latest tariff proclamation from President Trump. It makes all of our jobs more exhausting, as we all could appreciate.
Which then, based on that, is it a situation of just buy the dip? Because if there's any strong negative reaction to these broad tariff risks, but as you say, a border adjustment is very different than like these broad sweeping tariffs. And it seems like hedge funds and retail continue to decide to buy the dip. What do you think?
I think the big problem with that is that, the high and immediate tariff approach that President Trump is bringing to bear in trying to bring offshore U.S. jobs back to America is problematic. That before you can protect industries, you first have to have them. For example, if auto assembly relies upon parts made in Canada or Mexico, a 25% rise in parts could mean a slowdown or shutdown in an auto assembly plant, resulting in U.S. unemployment. The disruption during COVID highlighted how badly we gutted American industrial output in a lot of products. And Scott Bessent, people forget, he originally pushed for new universal tariffs on imports that started only 2.5%, and then rise gradually as we build up the industries to replace things that we don't produce at scale anymore.
So I was on my way home from the basketball game and I started to feel very sharp.
Inflationary impact historically from tariffs. It's hard to see how short-term, tariffs won't contribute to both inflation and potentially economic slowdown, which could be problematic. So buying the dip, today looks smart, but we'll have to wait and see how this all plays out.
Do you expect any sort of forward trading volatility fueled by this global tariff uncertainty? Do you see any areas for opportunity or any areas that you're shying away from?
I think right now the market is broadening out. We're seeing equal weighted S&P outperform away from Max 7 simply because the spread between earnings growth is being reported between the 493 companies and the Magnificent Seven has narrowed, even though it still remains quite significant. And as you mentioned before, at the outset, concerns about CapEx spending being excessive, given the DeepSeek news that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. So I think where we are today is that, the best strategy and what we're doing in our funds is, one, we have a dedicated infrastructure fund, which is really leveraging off of the opportunity set that we see. But in our American fund, what we're doing is essentially continuing to barbell the Magnificent Seven with a hedged exposure against the Magnificent Seven with what we think are idiosyncratic ideas like in healthcare, biotech, and other areas which would be less impacted by disruption in global trade.
Right, so you can't not own them, but you need to also have exposure to other things. Last question here. Fed Chair Jay Powell, front and center in D.C. on Tuesday and Wednesday, testifying to Congress, first the Senate, then the House. What's the most important thing for you to hear?
Stability. I think Fed Chairperson Powell has done a very good job. He's trying to bring the country back to a monetary policy which existed prior to the global financial crisis, which is, real interest rates around 2%, current, Fed funds rate, which is consistent with the, pre-GFC environment. I think people of the past generation need to go back and look at essentially what the interest rate dynamic was before we had a period of time when interest rates were essentially zero for a prolonged period of time and the disruption that caused. So I think stability from Chairman Powell is a good thing, and that's something that markets should essentially reward.
Say less, I guess, basically. Hey, James, really appreciate it. Thank you so much, James Abate, Managing Director and Chief Investment Officer over Center Asset Management. Some individual stock stories that are quite interesting to track is TD Bank seeking to raise about $14 billion in a Schwab stake exit. They want to get rid of that entire stake in Charles Schwab. We wanted to get more on this with Paul Goldberg, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Equities Analyst. Paul, what did you make of this? Like, why would they do this? Is this just strategic or is there something else going on?
I don't think it's necessarily strategic, Alex. I think it's partially to simplify the business. Also, TD got hit with AML investigation and was fined and got an earnings cap, got an asset cap in the U.S., so they can't really grow in the U.S. much larger on the banking side. Sounds like they're trying to simplify the business, have an ability to buy back some stock, have some extra capital in hand.
Where does TD's business currently stand? If you were to give us a broader perspective, how is it lining up against competitors?
Well, I think that you have to look at it in two different areas. One in Canada. So in Canada, they're one of the largest banks across personal and commercial banking. In the US, they, again, one of the largest banks, but they're very much personally focused, people all over the east coast of the US.
So what is going to take for them to...
I want to drop into Fox 24. I think they're talking about AI at the moment.
Sans doute, without a doubt, it's one of the greatest transformations of modern times, and we have to decide whether or not we're on the right track and at the right speed.
France is looking for allies to ensure it doesn't miss out on the artificial intelligence curve. A €50 billion contract from the Emirates and another €20 billion from a Canadian fund. France is also counting on the support of India, which is co-chairing the summit in Paris. The French government says they want to diversify alliances to avoid being dependent. Money is AI's lifeline. We're very good at raising money for soccer clubs. Why shouldn't we do it to finance our French excellence when it comes to artificial intelligence? To stand up to the Chinese and American titans is a third way possible. Sovereignty is a major issue, and in this battle, France is conceding there is some way to go.
We Europeans are a little behind, un peu distancés.
Paris will be AI's world capital this week, hosting heads of states and CEOs. At the heart of the AI summit, there will be questions on regulation and how Europe can stand out. France's AI ecosystem is made up of 2,000 startups, engineers, 300 data centers, and soon 35 new sites.
With President Trump's announcement on the Stargate project, or China's DeepSeek, there are no rules. They're put aside. The European Union and France have opted for a more measured approach.
This week, France also announced its intention to equip 6 million public agents with AI software to facilitate their work, a further step in this revolution.
Palestinians in Gaza have been able to return to the north after Israeli troops withdrew from the Netzarim corridor, which cut the enclave in half. The development comes as negotiations for phase 2 of the ceasefire have commenced. The future of the enclave remains in doubt after a proposal from the US president to take over Gaza. Over the weekend, 3 Israelis were released in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, and their emaciated state has increased domestic pressure in Israel to extend the truce. Earlier, I spoke to our correspondent, Noga Tuckman.
Let's go back to Bloomberg here.
Basically, it's a super competitive market.
And breakdown in Canada, there's fewer banks than we have, 1 million over here. So like, how do they shake up in terms of their competition in Canada? How do they line up there?
Well, their competition, there are 6 largest banks, or some people call it 5+1 because National Bank is a little bit smaller, even though they just finalized an account closer of Canadian Western Bank that's going to expand them a little bit. But some people describe that market as a competitive monopoly between these banks. So there's some smaller banks and credit unions, but these banks control 90+% of deposits and loans in the country. So very, very concentrated. And they compete very aggressively against everything. So the market shares, when you see them shift, we're talking about basis points here and there from period to period.
All right, Paul, really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Paul Goldberg.
Yeah, I'm going to go to CNBC about, China launches retaliatory tariffs.
Meanwhile, there's China. Retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods now in effect. Let's get to Eunice Yu this morning in Beijing with the latest. Hey, Eunice.
Hey, Carl. Well, China's counter tariffs are probably not going to have a meaningful impact on American business. Unlike President Trump's blanket tariffs, China's are targeted. Goldman Sachs has estimated that the Chinese levies cover $14 billion of U.S. exports to China. So that's only about 10% of the overall number of goods that the U.S. shipped to China last year. What is going to be important for us to watch, though, going forward is just how willing China is to expand its retaliatory toolbox. Already we saw a willingness, or at least a seemingly willingness last week, to target specific companies. So last week, when the Chinese were announcing the countermeasures, one of the actions was to launch an antitrust investigation into Google to blacklist PVH as well as Illumina. And then last December, it also launched an antitrust investigation into NVIDIA. There are also reports that the antitrust watchdog is now mulling a investigation into Apple. So you have all of that, and then overnight, the Wall Street Journal was reporting that the Chinese strategy could be to expand this to include Broadcom as well as Synopsys. So the Chinese Foreign Ministry today responded to that, dismissing the report, but this is something that the business community here has been very concerned about as President Trump takes office, that the Chinese would be using this type of retaliatory tool to push back against whatever President Trump decides to do. Guys?
Meanwhile, Eunice, I don't know if you've noticed, but I mean, after a period of drastic underperformance, K-Web's up 10% for the year. S&P's up only 2%. I just wonder if there is a sense that money is flowing in your direction once again.
You know, from outside, I've heard that people say that the values of Chinese stocks has gotten so low, so maybe this is a time to get in. But from a Chinese perspective, a lot of investors are staying very far away from the Chinese stock market. Of course, a lot of Chinese cannot unless you're.
Now, remember what I said about the Japanese yen, USD Japanese yen trade. The yen is strengthening. That's usually a sign that the system is building stress. Now, that stress may be this whole tariff issue in international trade. And, you know, if these tariffs continue to go on, if that's the case, then most likely the Japanese yen will continue to strengthen. And then eventually, enough stress in the system will lead to a higher VIX index, which will lead to a sell-off in the equity market.
Professional invest outside of the country. There are a lot of capital controls that make it difficult for people to do that. And in fact, what we're seeing here is many Chinese investors and just ordinary Chinese looking to open US dollar accounts as well as investing into gold. So it's a little bit of an irony, actually, because the messaging in China has always been that the dollar shouldn't dominate, that the yuan should gain an international status, but its own people are looking at the US dollar thinking maybe that's a better investment.
Yeah, it does explain gold at all-time highs once again. Eunice, we'll talk with more frequency today. Eunice, you in Beijing.
All right, now. Hi, I'm Kevin. Now, let's take a look at. This would be, I don't know, maybe. Decoding Putin's War Speak. This is by the BBC. This was published by BBC World Service. This was 2 hours ago. Let's just see if this is interesting. I haven't listened to this.
Hello, I'm Krasi Twig. Welcome to this episode of the Global Jigsaw podcast from BBC Monitoring, which is a part of the World Service. We are a multilingual team looking at the world through the lens of its media. Today we're going to talk about language itself and its importance for war propaganda. You might have noticed yourself some of the peculiarities of the militarized language. Semantic distortions and euphemisms are well-worn tools of war propagandists. And Russia's war in Ukraine is no exception.
This is going to be pretty good, I think. My gut feeling of this. I've never seen this podcast before, but before we dive into this, because this is going down a rabbit hole, let me just plug a couple products here. please help support my work and your health by getting the products that are on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. I have a lot of different supplements. And I tell you throughout the show how to stack them to improve your health and to save some money. Get the elderberry zinc lozenges and the manuka honey lozenges. Both of them are 60 parts per million of structural nanosilver. The moment you have that irritation, either during the cold season or during the allergy season, mitigate that irritation right away with the lozenges. And that way you are reducing further problems, all right? Creating those secretions around the irritant to neutralize the irritant, and creating the secretions to protect that epithelial tissue and your oral pharynx and create that barrier to maintain that mucosal barrier. Really important for your innate immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get a couple bags to your household. Have some at work. Have some at home. Have some in your backpack, because you don't know when you'll start to have that issue. Now, we are still in the cold season in the United States. Many states in the United States had a big winter storm that came in, so people are going to get sick, and it's really important to have lozenges right when you have that irritation. After the cold season, we're going to be moving into the allergy season, and it's really important to mitigate those allergens right away. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the manuka honey or the elderberry zinc, very high quality lozenges. Get a few bags for your household. Be prepared. If you're prepared, you don't have a problem. When you're not prepared, you can develop a problem.
От Первой мировой до событий настоящего времени, включая специальную военную операцию.
We'll try to decode the Kremlin's war speak to understand its aim and power. With me in the studio is BBC Monitoring's Russia editor, Vitaly Shevchenko, who is going to interpret the Kremlin's military jargon for us. Vitaly has been monitoring Russia for over 2 decades. He's a native Ukrainian, so he can decipher the crossfire of insults and help us understand how the war is talked about and why. In the second episode of this mini-series, we'll turn to Ukraine's linguistic strike back. Today's episode is all about Russia. So, Vitaly, language. Why are we talking about language? Why is it important for war propaganda?
Well, tragically, Ukraine, the war between Russia and Ukraine is a very good example of how words kill. Without language, without words, none of this would be happening, really. And language matters, well, for a lot of things, including propaganda and war, because it's a key tool which humans use to interpret reality, to understand reality, to process reality. And governments, particularly dictatorial regimes, they build whole linguistic universes to twist reality.
You've been watching Russian state media on a daily basis for the last 3 years and more. How have pro-Kremlin commentators been using this kind of language?
I would say they use it in 3 key ways. Number one is using language to explain reality away, to make people more accepting of the grim reality of war. And key here are euphemisms, i.e. words that downplay and diminish. The second key way is, well, basically making people hate the enemy more by dehumanizing the enemy, making the enemy look like they're not humans at all. And thirdly, language is being used to conceal the true nature of what's going on.
So I'd love to hear the examples in the local language. So when you talk about the euphemisms in language that conceals and maybe points the attention to something that is supposed to be important and stuff that is not important, you're not supposed to talk about. Can you give me examples of those things?
You will have heard about numerous instances when Ukraine targeted oil refineries, weapon storage facilities, and other targets across Russia. So the Russian media, they've come up with the whole language specifically to play down the impact of these strikes. So instead of fires, they say, for example, smoke. There's been zadumlение, there's some smoke going on. Instead of explosions, they talk about pops. It's just a pop. Who knows what caused the pop? But, you know, it sounds less worrying, less dramatic. Also, they keep talking about things like Termotochka, for example, like a thermal point to explain away or maybe strange phenomena when an arms storage facility caught fire. Also, you can't conceal the fact that Ukraine is using drones against targets in Russia anymore. They hardly ever talk about a Ukrainian drone attack. They talk about foreign drones, Russian air defenses. They're so effective. They keep shooting down Ukrainian drones like by the dozen. But somehow, a lot of these drones, they happen to fall on oil refineries and they catch fire and there's a massive explosion. I have to say that's a trick also used by Ukraine a lot. Another way of diminishing the enemy is the enemy doesn't do something, they attempt to do something. Just this morning, I was looking at reports, Russian reports about a huge oil refinery catching fire in Reykjavik. So one report said Ukrainian drones attempted to attack this oil refinery. There are pictures of an enormous blaze. So linguistically, they're saying it was just an attempt.
And we should say that none of this is unique to Russia as an approach in how they are handling the subject of this war. Dehumanizing the enemy, for example, that is something we have seen in many other conflicts. So what are the examples in this case that you can tell us about?
When Vladimir Putin
Now think about that. We're talking about the war in Ukraine with Russia, and then all of a sudden Billy Idol comes on.
and launched his special military operation, which in itself is a euphemism for war. He spoke about how neo-Nazis and extremists ruled Ukraine.
И для этого мы стремимся к демилитаризации и денацификации Украины.
Much of the official reporting of Ukraine in Russia, it keeps talking about neo-Nazis and extremists. They're not people, they are extreme. There are different words that they use, one of which is ukrop, which means dill, like the herb dill. And the reason why that word gets used to denote Ukrainians, because in Russian and Ukrainian it sounds similar, ukrop, Ukrainians, or Ukrainets. That's why that kind of word is used very often. Also, some of this language can be very offensive, of course. When they talk about ukrop being a herb, they talk about kasik ukrop, like mowing this herb down, meaning killing Ukrainians. On a more geopolitical level, the Russian Foreign Ministry, specifically Maria Zakharova, the fiery spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry, she likes talking about the Anglo-Saxons. If we are to believe her, the Anglo-Saxons are alive and well, and they're plotting against Russia endlessly. In a lot of people's minds, it's kind of very distant and inhuman. It's something they may have read in history books, but they're still alive and well. Take the Ukrainian army or the Ukrainian government. They hardly talk about them in terms of the government and its army. They talk about the regime, the Zelensky regime, or militants or paramilitaries ruled or commanded by the Zelensky regime. The thrust of this effort is that it puts a distance, a very significant distance between humans, people, and who Russians are supposed to see their sites. Inhuman Anglo-Saxons, neo-Nazis, and Ukrop.
How are the Ukrainians taking these insults?
Well, as it happens, I've just been talking to some popular Ukrainian comedians, and stand-up comedy in Ukraine is booming. And one after the other, they told me that humor is vital. They don't really have any other choice to survive and stay sane other than take all these linguistic insults with a dose of humor. Ukrop, for example, there's a party in Ukraine called Ukrop. Yeah, we're Ukrop, we're Ukrainian. So what? I mentioned explosions and how they're not really explosions but pops. This is where it gets slightly complicated in terms of translations. In Russian, pop would be chlapok, yeah? But it also looks like the word for cotton, yeah? So chlapok, chlapok, and in Ukrainian that would be bavovna. So Ukrainians have used the word bavovna, which is the word for cotton, the word for pop in Russia, as a humorous and a chilling kind of way designation of all these explosions in Russia. They keep talking about how do you like these pops now. I know a lot of this humor is kind of dark and grim, and there's a lot of gallows humor going on, a lot of schadenfreude. This is war, it is real.
Humor is a powerful way to undermine your enemies. So you understand why they're doing it. But how are the Russians feeling to be the butt of jokes?
These insults, of course, they only deepen the chasm. Of course, Russians are not particularly happy to be called orcs, for example. That's a very popular word used by Ukrainians to designate Russians, to dehumanize them as well.
Мы сейчас поддерживаем наших парней, которые в окопах, орки лезут.
All this tension, all this animosity, to a huge extent, is based on language, on these hugely insulting words that are being used by both sides.
According to Russia.
Okay. Let me go to another channel here. I mean, that's interesting, and you know, how language and propaganda are the use of certain words. I want to go to Fox Business about people rebuilding their home.
California Governor Gavin Newsom meeting with President Trump at the White House yesterday in a bid to help secure aid for recovery after the LA wildfires. Damage and economic loss projected to be between $250 and $275 billion. That's according to AccuWeather. State Farm is asking California for permission to hike home insurance rates in the state by an average of 22% as a result of the wildfires. Joining me now, the Corcoran Group founder, Barbara Corcoran. Barbara, it's so great to see you, and I'm so sorry about your home. You lost your home in Los Angeles.
I sure did. I'm getting over it. That's my sweetheart.
Oh, well, here are some pictures we're showing our viewers of your trailer home in the Tahitian Terrace Park community.
Yes.
And then some video that you took showing the devastating destruction after the fires. I mean, Barbara, this is just so frightening. We're so sorry for your loss.
It still strikes me like it's unbelievable, but every time I talk to my neighbors, they're committed to rebuilding, and they're so optimistic, and most of my neighbors lost everything they own in the house.
You know, there was a lot of controversy with, I'm going to bring this up, Josh Altman, who has been on multiple platforms, including Fox Business and TMZ, saying that 70% of the Palisades residents aren't going to come back. What are you hearing?
I'm from the exact opposite. I'm hearing 100% are coming back. They aren't quite realistic about what the construction costs are going to be, which will be much
I don't hear they're coming back.
Everyone's committed to coming back. That's ridiculous.
Is there concern about the rebuilding efforts? Because, you know,
They
Governor
may
Newsom
be,
did suspend.
the owners may be, the rich owners may be committed to coming back. But the city seems as though it's going to be buying up the land and turning it into a smart city. So the owners may be committed, but it doesn't matter what they're committed to. It's what the government's committed to, because it's a disaster. It's deemed as a disaster site. Now, should these people be able to rebuild their homes? Yes, but the problem is that they're never going to be able to get affordable insurance. You know, and it wouldn't matter if you're rich.
A lot of those
If you're
EPA
super
if
you're super wealthy, it won't matter. But for the average person or even the upper middle class, they can't afford to build and then not have insurance for a backup. So I'm not so sure that the rebuilding is going to be as opportunistic and as the take rate for rebuilding is going to be as high as what Barbara is saying. No way. No way.
Or stories about going to the California permit office to try to get a permit. It's a year, it's 2 years. Jillian Michaels has talked about this. Do you think that that's actually going to meaningfully change?
It's everything. I mean, what he has done is he's wiped away all the red tape, allowing a clean road to rebuild in California. That's so important. Without that motion, nothing would happen. It would take many more years to rebuild.
So McDonald's comp sales for fourth quarter up 0.4%. Estimate was negative 0.9%. So comp sales went up for the fourth quarter for McDonald's to 0.4. Estimate was negative 0.9. So people are still buying bad quality food.
He's been terrific for the state. And President Trump has gotten on the same page too. It's just everybody's working toward the same effort.
It turned positive because of international sales. So that we're exporting our heart disease. We're importing cheap goods and exporting our heart disease.
Terrific to watch everybody coming together.
Now, there has been a lot of talk in Washington about putting conditions on the aid to California, because on the same breath that Gavin Newsom went to Washington yesterday to ask for recovery aid for California, on Monday, the state legislature in a special session that he called, it's $50 million. $25 million is to fight President Trump when it comes to immigration. So where does this play out? How does this play out for residents?
Well, he hesitated in signing it, and I think that was a negotiating tactic. Everybody's got their own. I don't think that will come to pass. I think he just wanted to go in acting very seriously, like he had a big club behind his back. Okay, it's just not going to happen, I don't think.
Now, talk to me, what about timing? I mean, this is not just, you have a home there, but this is, I mean, from a professional standpoint, what kind of time frame do you think it's going to take? I mean, you've got to clear the debris, then you've got to, again, permitting. Is there enough contractors and construction crews in California?
There's a contractor sign on every corner. There aren't enough contractors. Excuse me. What's going to happen is people are going to have a little reality check when they get a $1,000 foot estimate for a 2,500 square foot house. That's $2,500, a house that they probably paid $1.2 million for. That's going to be shocking. But people are so deeply committed to rebuilding their homes. I think people are going to get over it.
I'm not so sure they're so deeply committed unless they're uber wealthy, unless they have a lot of wealth. Maybe not uber wealthy is like Elon Musk. And it doesn't even seem like he even has a house. He just seems to sleep on the floor everywhere. But maybe that's the reason why he's uber wealthy. But very wealthy people are going to rebuild. But a lot of people lost their homes that weren't very wealthy. They're not going to be able to rebuild. They're just impossible. It's impossible. They won't even get the insurance. And a lot of these people that aren't wealthy, they don't have extra money. So they'd have to borrow the money from the bank. What bank is going to give them the loan if they can't get adequate insurance? It's not going to happen. I don't think she's talking about the soup. She's talking about wealthy people. She's not talking about the average person that lost their home.
Money for your neighbors. Yes. Your neighbors that lost everything.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. The neighbors. The neighbors. The neighbors. You know why she's really wealthy? Well, she's been blessed and did well in the real estate, but also because of Shark Tank. All right? But she's wealthy. Her neighbors are wealthy. She doesn't have poor neighbors. She doesn't have average Joe neighbors or upper middle class neighbors. She has rich neighbors. This woman is disconnected from reality.
You go.
Well, the neighbor next to me had no insurance on his house, and the neighbor next to him had lost her insurance only 2 weeks ago because she was 10 days late on her payment. You know, the insurance companies have been very quick to cancel policies, which people don't know. They're very slow to rewrite policies. Virtually no policies are being rewritten for months before the California fire. So insurance has been a real issue, and I'm hoping that something's going to change it to ensure these houses once they're built.
Yeah, because a lot of those, especially the Pacific Palisades.
So maybe the rich are living a little bit on the red line on the way what they can afford. Maybe that's what she's saying. Maybe they shouldn't even be living there. Why not live in a place that is cheaper, safer? It has less BS. But I'll tell you, a lot of people are not going to be rebuilding because they can't afford it, and they can't get the insurance, and they can't get the loan from the bank.
Farm last summer was canceling multiple policies but they're saying you can't build in these areas anymore. They're saying we can't unless the modeling changes from their perspective, which it sounds like that is on the right track now.
It is on the right track, but who's saying they can't build? You mean the insurance companies?
The insurance companies are saying that in certain areas in California, it doesn't make sense to insure properties because they are just too high for fire.
It's an opinion.
Maybe not the Palisades, but in parts of
well, even if they were talking about the Palisade, it's a play for getting an interest, getting a raise on their insurance policies. You know, so I'm not sure that's coming from anything but a singular opinion.
Okay, well, while I have you here, 30-year fixed mortgage rates hit their lowest level in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Finally, they're now below 7%. This is now from
a fraction of a point.
I know. Trying to find some, but yeah, but mortgage rates are just not moving lower. How is this affecting?
Now, like I said yesterday, the bread circus with the Super Bowl was not that important. What is important is that 30-year rate mortgage of 6.97%. That's so much more important than who won the Super Bowl, if Taylor Swift was there, who played the halftime. The bread circus doesn't matter. It's over. You partly gained weight because you eat too many Doritos. And guess what? The real game is that interest rate right there, 6.97%. But most people couldn't tell you what it is. Most people couldn't tell you what the federal funds rate is, which governs this. It sets the rate, and then banks bring it up for the mortgage. And so it's affecting bond markets, it's affecting the yield curve. That's the real Super Bowl. That's the real thing to pay attention to, not the bread circus that a lot of people wasted their time on yesterday.
In 2 ways. Mentally, it affects the housing market because people are waiting for very good news, and coming down a 1/10 of a point is not really good news. It went from 7 to 6.9. Psychologically, that makes a difference. But with interest rates remaining high, what it really causes is fewer houses on the market. No one wants to move, and fewer houses to choose from at higher rates. So it's difficult for home buyers today.
Do you think that sellers, because we're now going into the spring selling season,
yes, we are.
Do you think that sellers are going to start to get realistic about the prices?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's in the nature of sellers to be realistic. Honestly, their house is always worth more.
You don't think the agents are going to come in and say that they're being a little under? Because I mean, there's still no movement.
Yes, there's no movement. I don't think prices will shake out at all. I think they'll hold out, hoping interest rates will go down again. And what is it to them? It's another 6 months. And a lot of the sellers have very low interest rates. They don't want to give up.
Where is your attention focused? Which markets are you focused on?
Well, I really like the luxury market. I hate to say I'm very bullish on that, particularly in warm climates. All the rates are going up almost double the national average, and that's a pretty good report card.
So you're talking about Florida.
I don't know. I'm looking at the way Barbara talks, and it's hard to see it with the camera angle, but it looks like her mouth muscles are more developed on the right side of her mouth than on her left. It's as if she has a slight paralysis of the muscles around her mouth on the left side. And they're hiding it in the camera angle. It's very
It's
odd.
working.
Yeah, well, Barbara, certainly, again, our thoughts and prayers are with everyone, you, your neighbors, and I hope that the GoFundMe can produce results for
Produce a
you.
lot of money, but most importantly, everybody's coming together in California. You have to realize that the government is coming in, personal wealthy people are coming together. There's a lot of egos involved, but everybody's trying to lead the charge.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, Barbara,
yeah.
thank you.
I don't believe that there's going to be a major rebuild. I think it's going to be a smart city. I'm sure was the whole plan. All right. All right, let's go back to the Bloomberg while I find another video to play here.
Through, we know that he paused tariffs on Canada and Mexico, but still, it's enough to send shares surging really high on Monday.
What's interesting about commodity tariffs like this is that commodity markets are really efficient. So if you're going to tax something, the price of the actual commodity is going to come down in order to make up for the extra payment. Plus, you have regional differentials. So the price of aluminum here versus what the price of aluminum in London is going to be different. So you're going to have different payments also. It's just a very complex market. So to see how that will resolve itself, because it will be efficient. If you need it, you will get it. It just depends on what that price will be versus like a coat or something.
Could it also be because aluminum imports are being imported a lot, like in Canada, UAE, Mexico? I mean, I think it would be different if the US produces enough.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like it's same thing for oil. That's why we still need Canadian oil. So we'll just reprice enough to make up for whatever tariff. They might not like it. The producers might not like it, but it will reprice. It's not like the demand just empties and goes away.
And how do you make aluminum? You sap the living daylights out of it with lots and lots of electricity.
Oh my
God. Oh yeah. All of these
Hugely
things.
energy intensive.
Mines, all of them. A lot of mines like copper, though, you can get better energy efficiency if you supply it in a different way. So
everyone will be an expert this week already.
What? Already? It's only taken me 18 years. Okay. What else you got?
McDonald's. I think this is interesting because it's up 5%. Sales rose in the fourth quarter, but there's kind of a nuance. So international business made up for the decline in the US, and we have McDonald's saying that the US sales were the weak spot, and they're saying that low-income consumers in the US are really still under pressure, and they expect the first quarter to still be a quote low point this year. And of course, we know that they emerged from this E. coli outbreak that really scared off some folks. And that's why for a while, I think my friends were just ordering the fish fillet or something because
But you're still McDonald's?
Yeah.
They're still going to McDonald's.
They're still going to McDonald's, but then McDonald's also said that guest count increased, but the ticket amount or what people were buying were much less.
Interesting. Any other companies you're keeping an eye on?
Last is Hyatt. Shares are flat or actually slightly lower, 0.3%. We have Hyatt Hotels agreeing to buy Playa Hotels for $13.50 a share. And this expands their reach in the all-inclusive resort. But we have a Baird analyst saying that why would they be making this deal when companies are rewarded for pursuing an asset-light strategy? So it really makes you think about the
She's just repeating herself from earlier. All right, I'm going to go to CNN, and they are demonizing JD Vance. This is CNN.
Vice President J.D. Vance is questioning whether courts can block actions taken by the president, and some are inferring that he's raising the possibility that the president just ignore these orders. This is what the vice president wrote, quote, "Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power." This followed a judge's order that temporarily blocked Elon Musk and his team from accessing sensitive Treasury Department systems. With us now is CNN senior legal analyst, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York and Philadelphia Eagles fan. That is why I'm wearing the tie this morning for you, sir.
All right, before we have CIA speak, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin C with magnesium. This boosts up your immune system. Taking vitamin C every day is very important. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose, drink it with filtered water. Vitamin C also helps with your skin. Magnesium and zinc also helps your immune system. Take it every day. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose. Take one in the morning, take one in the evening. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. This is CIA.
So J.D. Vance writes, judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. We maybe should underline and bold that word legitimate there because it's doing a lot of work. What can courts do?
It certainly is doing a lot of work, John, and J.D. Vance is really stepping very close to dangerous ground with that statement, and he knows it, by the way. This is a Yale Law School graduate. So the notion that the courts cannot stop the executive from doing what he wants, the notion that the executive may have the option of defying the courts, that is completely beyond even.
If the executive branch does something illegal, the court can look at the case and stop that activity. But if the executive branch feels that that lower court is wrong, this will go up to the Supreme Court to see if it's a constitutional, if there's a constitutional authority by the executive branch to do that. So this is going to elevate to a higher court. That's how the system works. That's lawfare.
Those extreme right-wing conservative theory in favor of broad executive power has ever argued. Now look, there is a very broad view of executive power. Sometimes it's called the unitary executive theory, which holds essentially that the president is all powerful within the executive branch. But even proponents of that theory do not say that the president is free to disregard an order of the court. If that were to happen, that is a line in the sand. That has not been crossed. Donald Trump did not cross that line in his first 4 years. He has not crossed that line in his first couple weeks here in his second term. But if we get over that line, then we've got a major crisis. And I think it's irresponsible of J.D. Vance. I know he didn't quite go there, but he got pretty close.
With CNN, everything's a major crisis emerging in the Trump administration because Orange Man must be bad. This is CIA.
And to be clear, the courts stopped all kinds of executive action from President Biden, too. The courts jump in all the time on executive actions because the Constitution is sort of murky on what a president can and can't do. Now, let me just read you the first part of Vance's tweet, because this actually sort of expands on his thinking. If a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal. If a judge tried to command the attorney general and how to use her discretion as a prosecutor, that's also illegal. But here's the thing. When a judge weighs in on powers that belong to Congress, on laws that Congress passed, and the executive, the president, may be ignoring or crossing the line on those laws, that might be another thing.
Yeah, I mean, even the premise of J.D. Vance's statement there is incorrect. I mean, judges do have the authority to block extra constitutional actions by the executive branch or by Congress. And John, you're exactly right. That has happened countless times to every administration in recent history and probably in the entire history of the United States. And president is part of being president. Presidents have railed publicly against decisions by the judiciary, but at times that's what the judiciary does. That's what the judiciary exists for, to say, no, you've gone too far, either Congress or executive branch.
I agree with you on that.
We are seeing this spate of decisions from district court judges. Those are trial level federal judges. We'll see another one today on the buyout issue. But remember also, there's a process here. If you lose in the district court and you're the administration and you don't like it, you have the right to appeal up to the Court of Appeals. And then you can even ask the next level, the U.S. Supreme Court, to take the case. So it's not as if the game is over once the district court judge rules. There's still many other layers of protection and appeal built in there too.
So to what extent, Ellie, do you think that the White House, the Trump White House, knows this and this is a concerted strategy? I ask you this because I read this renowned legal scholar over the last few days who said that the White House is engaging in what's called a make-me strategy.
What's wrong with that? I mean, look at all the lawfare that they threw at him during his first term and during his presidential run for his second term. I mean, my God, CNN is so biased. What's wrong with make-me strategy?
That scholar is a little shaky in some of his opinions. Yeah, look, the strategy that Donald Trump has used here so far is he's going to do what he wants first. And then he's going to make plaintiffs, he's going to make state attorneys general, he's going to make private citizens go sue him in court. If they want to stop him from doing what he wants, they have to make him. So that's definitely been a strategy by the president, but that's not unconstitutional.
Right.
Where it crosses a line is if that happens, he goes into court and the court says, you're not allowed to do this executive branch, or I'm putting it on hold, I'm putting an injunction. And then if the president or the executive branch defies that, that's where we get into real trouble here. So for sure, Donald Trump has taken a conscious legal strategy of, I'm going to do what I want. Maybe I'll lose in the courts. That's fine. I mean, I think there's problems in that, but that's not unconstitutional. Where we cross the line is if we start defying the courts.
Just to be clear, it was Eli Honey, who was a renowned legal scholar, writing about the make me strategy. In 20 seconds or less, the Supreme Court, this Supreme Court, do we have any hints about where they may be predisposed to go on how much power an executive has?
You know, this Supreme Court has generally been taking a broad view of executive power, but I also think it's a mistake to say, oh, they're a 6-3 Supreme Court. They ruled in favor of Trump on immunity. They're going to do whatever he said. They have rejected Donald Trump at many key junctures. They rejected his election fraud claims. They rejected some of his efforts to stop prosecutors from taking steps against him. They rejected his efforts to resist the subpoena. So I think this Supreme Court will not tolerate if the executive branch crosses that line of defying the courts.
Yeah, and also Congress. When Congress writes laws,
please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the probiotic, either in the veggie cap form or in the powdered form. I prefer the powder because I mix it with a bunch of other powders in my hummus for my lunch. But it's up to you how you want to take it. This is very important for good gut biome, good gut health. By taking a good probiotic and improving the health of your gut, you're going to absorb your nutrients more. You're going to have better metabolism. You're going to have a better communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. You're going to reduce inflammation in your gut, and your immune system will get better. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the veggie cap version or the powdered version on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Please use discount 5 and you get $5 off. All right, let's go to live now. Right now, there is an attorney general discussing President Trump's federal funding actions.
And I'm grateful for my fellow attorneys general to be able to collaborate with them on a common purpose, a common to protect the residents of our states and to do our share, our assignment in protecting the rights and the privileges of the people we serve.
Over the past couple of weeks, as these things have happened, and I sort of posted your responses to, there's always a lot of comments. A lot of comments come in and say, that's not the role people elected the president. Why is this your role?
Look, let me say this to the people of Maryland who wonder what the role of the Attorney General is. My role is to protect the rights and the privileges of Marylanders. And I also recognize that there are many actions that come out of Washington where it is appropriate, more appropriate for others to act. And that's why we see lawsuits being filed against this administration by a number of non-governmental organizations, whether it's labor unions, whether it's democracy-oriented and reform-oriented organizations that are rightfully challenging these illegal actions by the Trump administration. But when we in the Office of the Attorney General evaluate and assess the threat coming from Washington, and we can draw a direct link to the rights and the privileges and the interests of Marylanders. Marylanders have an interest in NIH funding at the levels that they have been up until this weekend, for that funding to continue. It's going to save lives in Maryland. It will create jobs in Maryland. It will ensure that Maryland continues to be a leader when it comes to research. That is being threatened today. Marylanders who have in our economy one of the workforce is one of the highest percentages of federal workers. When the president threatens federal workers, that's a direct attack, not only the men and women who are public servants and faithfully serve our country, providing services to the American people. But it is an assault on the economy of Maryland. It will have an impact on things like tax revenues and unemployment insurance and the ability of state government to deliver services when our important partner, the federal government, abandons that mission. So there is a role, and I have a reaction that that the Maryland Attorney General is joining or commencing. You can be assured that I will be able to draw a direct link between the rights, privileges, and interests of Marylanders and the action that we're taking against this administration.
So Vice President and Elon Musk now have come out with this notion that the judges shouldn't interfere with the actions of the president. And you say?
Look, and they also use a fairly, sort of misplaced analogy to generals on the battlefield, and I served in the United States Army. I served as a judge advocate general, and I can tell you right now, there wasn't a single general that went into battle that didn't have their judge advocate general, their army lawyer at their side, advising them on the do's and don'ts. Even in warfare, there are do's and don'ts. So this notion that generals or judges should be, or that generals and therefore the president should act, without any guardrails or restrictions. That's simply equivalent to taking the U.S. Constitution and burning it up and throwing it out, because that is not what was contemplated by our founders. Judges have an important role, right? The president needs to execute the laws, right? Congress needs to
break free with the new Opera GX, a browser that puts you in control with a brand new design that frees up even more pixels for personalization and an inventory of features to up your game at every level.
Like example, and it's been articulated by a number of judges since January 20th, his sort of unilateral effort to eliminate birthright citizenship in this country. That has been a well-established law coming out of the Supreme Court in the late 1800s, and even before the Supreme Court's decision in the 1800s, a lot of common law supported that. So the judges, the courts, have a role to play in our system of government. Well, let's go one follow-up, then we'll come down here, then we'll work our way around the room.
Quantify the harm you think has been done to Maryland, and they've done by Maryland, so it's been blocked, but quantify the harm you think has been done.
I mean, it's difficult to quantify, and that's what litigation is, right? I mean, every day we're learning more about the harm and the damages. When it comes to, I'll just use one example, on the NIH cap on grants. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars at the University of Maryland, College Park, University of Maryland, Baltimore, UM Baltimore alone. Tens of millions of dollars. But when you talk about
how much of this spending that he's talking about is discretionary? How much of this spending is wasteful? He didn't answer that.
Impact on livelihoods, it's an impact on families, it's an impact on those populations that rely.
So as long as it just keeps on creating jobs, but it's wasteful, then it should be okay, right? Is that what he's saying? If it affects your community, even though it's a wasteful spending and it's discretionary, it should still continue on. He's not answering the big question. How are we going to balance our budget? How are we going to stop the wasteful spending? And all he cares about is the jobs in Maryland. What about the nefarious activities that were going on at the NIH? Don't you think we should shut that down? Like I've been saying for 5 years?
Office preparing kind of in anticipation of those threats being acted on, potential actions before they even take place. And the second question is regarding the costs of all of these legal actions you've taken against the Trump administration in the last few weeks. Do you have a sense as to how much these lawsuits are actually costing so far?
Good, and remember that second question, because when you're first, you're going to want to remind me of that second one, although, yeah. So in terms of whether it's the transportation funding or any other funding, I spent 6 years in Congress, and when Congress appropriates money, it more often than not does it with a set of criteria, a funding formula that has to be followed. And if the president thinks that he can come in and just with the stroke of his pen change those funding formulas, then he is going to be confronted with a challenge, I can imagine, from Maryland and other states, okay, that are going to challenge that those alterations to funding formulas.
I want to go to military operations going on.
Some of these ships are now passing by, and what is
Naval
a
military
major exercise.
operations.
The Air Force has also taken part in this exercise. The aviation wing of the Navy has also been involved in this particular endeavor. It is important to note that Pakistan is strategically located along the Arabian Sea, and one of the priorities is that in event of any conflict, Pakistan will be interested in ensuring that the sea lines of communication remain open, because about 5,000 oil tankers and 40,000 cargo ships pass close to the Pakistani coast as they come out of the Persian Gulf. Kamal Haider, Al Jazeera, on the Arabian Sea.
And Army units from the U.S. and South Korea have held joint military drills close to the demilitarized zone with North Korea. Comes at a time of heightened tensions on the Korean Peninsula and uncertainty about what the return of President Trump will mean for the region. Rob McBride reports from Bitchute in South Korea.
In a mountain valley firing range close to the border with North Korea, a show of military might by US and South Korean forces. These joint drills are criticized by Pyongyang, which sees them as preparation for war. But the US rejects that, saying they provide stability through deterrence.
The value of training for this is a great impact. It's building those relationships with our counterparts, building communication lines with each other.
But a big question now hangs over the future of such drills, with return of Donald Trump to the White House. In his first term, as he held diplomatic summits with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, military exercises were drastically scaled back.
We will be stopping the war games, which will save us a tremendous amount of money, unless and until we see that the future negotiation is not going along like it should.
Trump has also threatened to make South Korea pay more for the stationing of US troops.
I told South Korea, I'm sorry, you're going to have to pay for your military. We have 40,000 troops over there. You're going to have to pay.
In the years that Trump has not been in office, these exercises have been held with an increased frequency and scale, reflecting both the closer military ties between the US and South Korea and the heightened tensions with North Korea. The drills have also been expanded to include the military of Japan, to counter not only North Korean threats, but the expanding influence of China in the region. The meeting last week between Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba seemed to reinforce that close relationship. But both Tokyo and Seoul know the potential for volatility from a Trump White House. Rob McBride, Al Jazeera, Pocheon, South Korea.
Access to electricity across Syria is extremely
All right, I'm
limited.
going to go to Preet Zakaria, talking about Trump's head-spinning moves. This is CNN.
You wanna watch a movie? You're going to need a big screen. Slide lyrics, like that.
Zyrtec allergy relief works fast and lasts a full 24 hours, so Dave can be the
deliverer of dance.
Here's my take.
All right, before we go to his take, before you go to his take, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex, reduce the load on your pancreas. This digestive enzyme complex can break down carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. And by you taking a supplement that breaks down your food, you're reducing the load on your pancreas. This is really important when you're 40 plus years of age. But if you're an athlete, you do a pre or post nutrition and you need to digest your food, your foodstuffs for that workout. Taking the digestive enzyme complex will help you do that. So this is for athletes, but also for people that are 40 plus years of age that aren't athletes, to reduce the load on your pancreas and to break down your carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. When you can digest your food better, then you're going to be able to absorb, you're going to have better metabolism, you're going to have better nutrition. Resveratrol is a great supplement to take. I've been taking resveratrol for decades. It's an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals. It helps the health of the mitochondria, so you're going to have more energy. It also helps to get rid of senescent cells. Cells that are in senescence are cells that stop dividing and just sit there and just collect garbage. And as we get older, unfortunately, we get a lot of senescent cells. So you need to get rid of them. Resveratrol helps with that. Resveratrol also is very synergistic with C60, NAD+, and ubiquinol. You get the max benefit of resveratrol when you take it with C60, NAD+, or ubiquinol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get resveratrol.
American foreign policy, with tariffs against Canada and Mexico dramatically announced and then suddenly postponed. USAID was gutted, and President Trump said he wants the US to take over Gaza. The most revealing lens through which to look at all this might not be Donald Trump's pronouncements, but rather those of his aides and supporters. The tariff tantrum suggested that foreign leaders are becoming skilled at handling Trump. They mollify him with token concessions, allow him to declare victory, and then return to business as usual. The concessions that Mexico and Canada made were either small bore or policies that they were already.
So this is the first time I'm listening, so I'm going to just have a knee-jerk reaction. I suspect in this video he's going to say something like Trump's strategy is not working because the other side has figured it out. So it's just token negotiations and just Trump is, just being too bombastic is in his second term. I have a feeling that Trump, the way he thinks, there's a feedback loop and he changes his strategy. He's not monolithic, and this guy sees things from a multi-dimensional perspective. Now, let's see if Fareed Zakaria says that.
Mexico agreed to send thousands of troops to the border at the Biden administration's request, and are now doing the same for Trump. In the case of Canada, Trump's own statement notes that Canada was agreeing to implement its border plan, much of which had been announced over a month ago. Some conservative commentators pointed out the obvious. In the words of a Wall Street Journal editorial, Trump blinks. The Fox anchor Laura Ingraham implied that the president caved to huge negative reaction from markets, saying, "I'm not too impressed about the concessions from Canada." Canadian media reactions were similar. Canada's CTV News published an article with the headline, "Canada takes a stand and Donald Trump blinks." The country's satirical...
Things could ramp really fast and markets can have a lot of volatility in less than 30 days from now. Beware. Beware.
22 minutes.
YouTube Premium is ad-free YouTube and the YouTube Music app all together. Uninterrupted.
This satirical show, 22 minutes, has a Donald Trump look-alike declaring victory.
I did the impossible. I made peace with Canada and ended the unjust trade war that I started. I'm signing this. This executive order, I did not lose, but I totally won the trade war order.
Of course, from J.D. Vance to Mike Johnson, Republicans fell over themselves to praise the stunning negotiating powers of President Trump. The Trump effect is in full force, Johnson posted.
Now, if he was so, if Trump really caved in, why are the Canadians the ones that are running the government? Why are they so worried if Trump doesn't really have the cards? How do you know that Trump's not bluffing with, some sort of peaceful negotiation with Canada? I think what he did is he postponed it so the automakers can front load their stock, for their cars, the subsystems, to reduce less disruption for a plant shutdown. That's what I think is happening. I could be wrong, but that's what I would do. Give them a heads up saying, you know what, we're coming up with some, negotiation, but the tariffs may ramp back up in March. It was postponed. So we may have another period of volatility. We may have some automakers that reduce their production. We don't know. I'm not so sure that Trump blinked. But there's no doubt, there is no doubt though, that the Canadian government was very, very worried.
Not only should President Donald Trump be on Mount Rushmore, I want to personally work the chisel. With the abrupt dismantling of USAID, Trump's supporters scrambled to adjust. Secretary of State Marco Rubio quickly blasted the agency, saying it was out of control and unresponsive. This was the same agency that he had repeatedly posted in favor of over the years, written about in his book with pride and admiration, and recently recommended funding increases to President Biden. The pattern is now familiar and was followed after Trump's Gaza announcement. Those who had long supported Trump's determination to end America's military interventions cheered when he announced he would take over Gaza, send in troops if necessary, displace 2 million Palestinians to neighboring countries, and stay in Gaza for long-term ownership. Kayleigh McEnany responded with this on Fox News.
President Trump is playing four-dimensional chess. You all are playing checkers.
Later that day, Trump officials began walking back key aspects of the president's plan, as did Trump himself. If you don't understand all this, you haven't played four-dimensional chess. Donald Trump's White House is now a court, and his courtiers scurry around, aware that the mercurial monarch might change his mind at any time. TikTok is terrible can suddenly become TikTok is great, and they need to pivot quickly. It reminds one of the court of Henry VIII, the monarch who went from being the greatest defender of the Catholic Church to a vicious opponent because he wanted a divorce that the Pope would not sanction. One man who refused to play the game, Sir Thomas More, had his head chopped off. The reason Trump forces aides and supporters to say things that they know are false is to enforce a regime in which loyalty is paramount, overriding facts, overriding your
He's a dictator. Did you see that CNN saying he's a dictator because Dr. Zakaria says so? Okay, Dr. Fareed Zakaria, Trump's a dictator. I'm telling you, I think the trade war with China, the trade war with Canada and Mexico is not over yet. It's not over yet. This is only round one.
Now, this might seem like an amusing spectacle, but there is a real cost. In the case of USAID, it will translate into death and despair for millions of the poorest people on the planet. On trade, it remains a...
Will there be some death and despair because of lack of American funds? Yes, but the thing is, it's important to get rid of the corruption, so when we do issue money for the ones that really need it, we may have more money to get. Let's just use the emotional fallacy,
Trump
Dr.
singled out
Freed.
Canada. In the 2024 fiscal year, less than 10% of migrant encounters happened at the Canadian border, and just 0.2% of fentanyl seizures occurred there. America runs a smaller trade deficit with Canada than with China or Vietnam. In fact, if you put aside Canadian crude oil, the US sells more to Canada than it buys from it. But the effect is...
But we're giving so much of our wealth to Canada through trade. Why don't we just buy Canada? I think that's the point that Trump's making. You know, it's the combination of should we rent it or should we buy it? Should we rent Canada or should we buy Canada?
For Canada, the US is turning into an undependable ally, and it will try to lessen its reliance on America and search for new markets and friends, from Britain to China.
Good luck with that.
The largest effect, though, is on American democracy. The scholar
A
Francis
big part
Fukuyama
of their
has noted-
fund, a big part of their economy is energy flowing into the United States. So that's not going to be very easy to ship it overseas, especially when if it's oil, they're competing with Brent crude. And if it's natural gas, guess what? Good luck with that, with LNG. So their energy sector isn't going to be that easy to just ship to other countries. Secondly, it's the automotive. Good luck with good luck with trying to compete in those other international markets. The competitive advantage that Canada has was it had a border. So it just had to design, it just had to build the subsystems, put it on a truck, and push it over to the border to where the plant is in the United States. Now they're going to sell a subsystem, put it on a boat, and then send it to China. China isn't even going to want their subsystems. Or Japan. Japan's not going to want their subsystems. Or send it to Europe. You think Germany wants their subsystems? Where the hell are they going to sell their automotive products? That's why Canada is scared.
That the history of modern government has been a steady movement away from patrimonial rule, the rule of a single strongman to benefit his family and friends, towards rule by institutions and rules and norms. He notes that in the United States now...
But these rules and norms that you're saying that Trump doesn't want to follow are rules and norms of wasting American taxpayer dollars, Dr. Freed.
Turn to patrimonial rule, as citizens freely debating laws are replaced by supplicants begging the king to favor their interests. Joining me now to talk about Trump, America, and the world is Richard Haas.
It's always pushing a global agenda, transnational capitalists, this one world government, this idea of, you know, America last, not America first. It's about globalization, not localization. That's what Dr. Freed pushes. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the omega-3. This helps with your cardiovascular health. It helps to prevent red blood cells from sticking too much, so you reduce clots. And omega-3 helps with your lipid profile. That means that you're lowering your LDL levels and increasing your HDL levels. That means you're improving your total cholesterol. When you lower your LDL levels, you're reducing the chances of building up plaque. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the omega-3. Omega-3 also brings down systemic inflammation. That's pretty important for your cardiovascular health. So take this every day, get the omega-3, use discount 5, get $5 off. Turmeric, it's a strong antioxidant and it brings down inflammation, pro-inflammatory cytokines. It brings those down. When you bring down chronic inflammation, your immune system is going to get better. And when you bring down inflammation, you're reducing the chances of building up additional plaque. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the turmeric. Now, Again, I was telling you about the 4 pillars of the core of my protocol. Max 35 or max 14 for the first pillar, boost up your immune system. C60 to soak up free radicals, bring down inflammation, turmeric, ashwagandha, lignans. And the 4th pillar of the core is to take Boomer Boost, improve your energy levels and your metabolism. Now, we were talking about turmeric. It's really important to bring down inflammation to boost up your immune system. But also, when you bring down inflammation on a regular basis, you're reducing the chances of plaque formation in your arteries or your vascular system. That's really important if you don't want to have problems with your heart. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get turmeric, get the omega-3, help your heart, help your immune system. Guess what? Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. Let's go back to the globalists. Dr. Fareed.
Foreign Relations and a senior counselor at Center Department. So Richard, let's start with Gaza. You know that region very well. What do you think? You know, a lot of people who say, well, this is out of the box thinking, maybe it stirs things up. What do you think Trump's proposal on Gaza has done on the ground?
It's out of the box, but doesn't mean it's better. Just because the box isn't working. Policy failures over the years, I think on the ground for Reed, probably plays into Hamas's hands. They can say, look, there's no chance of any compromise working. We right all along to be maximalist. For the Israeli right, this is what, a gift from heaven. This is manna from heaven. Their whole policy is to deny Palestinian nationalism. Transfer of people out of Gaza is for them the perfect precedent, because what they really want is transfer of 3 million more Palestinians out of the West Bank, or what they call Judea and Samaria. Plus, it shows for even more worrisome, if things get violent enough, it creates conditions which some will then point to and say, we therefore need to transfer. What does that do? It incentivizes the dynamic on the West Bank to become more and more violent. So Palestinians will get more radical, Israeli settlers and defense forces will get more combative. This is not a good dynamic. So it encourages the radicals on both sides. Absolutely, absolutely.
And what do you think Trump was thinking? When, I mean, you've talked to him, what's going on?
My own sense is he comes from a world of deals, and you can always sprinkle in new incentives. Oh, this doesn't work. What about this? What about that? What I think he's missing from the world of real estate is this is not something that can be easily bought off. What are the 2 most powerful things? You and I spent a lot of time talking about the Middle East. One is nationalism. Virtually everyone in the Middle East coming out of World War II wanted a state of their own. Zionism was getting a state of their own for the Jews. Palestinians and the Kurds have been denied it. This denies it and kills off the chance. Second of all, it reinforces humiliation. And what did we learn around 9/11 and other times? Humiliation is a dangerously powerful human motivator. So I think this is actually not only going to buy things off, but rather it's going to inflame the situation.
You can't tell a Palestinian family, you know, I'll build you a nicer house in Egypt. What they want is their own country.
100%. Man cannot live by bread alone. The idea that there's going to be a financial sop put forward that's going to assuage the desire for a country of their own is simply preposterous.
What else do are you noticing in this? You know, it's been 3 weeks. The fight with Canada, the fight with Mexico. Is there what's the broader implication?
One is being a friend buys you nothing. It's almost like everyone's equal. In some ways, it's worse to be a friend because you have more connections that can then be leveraged. You can threaten your security dependence. We can threaten our trade or investment. The other thing that I notice as someone who's worked, for multiple presidents, is the lack of anything resembling a serious policymaking process. There ought not to be surprises. You never want to send the president out there to propose something and someone says, well, hold it. Did you think about this? And say, take the Gaza thing again. What about the cost? What about troops? Or what about Palestinian reactions?
As you can see, it was uncomfortable because he himself walked back half of
within 24 hours.
Yeah.
That's what a policy process is meant to do, to anticipate how's everyone going to react, what's the context, what are the implementation concerns. It may be what seems to be a good idea, but then when you really put it under a microscope, not so good. And that's what we're seeing does not exist in the Trump administration on tariffs. We saw it. You put them on, you take them off. You see it now with Gaza. There's a haphazard quality to this, and a shifting number of players, special envoys here and there. This is not a process that is sustainable. Now, you talked about the allies feeling there's no point, there's no advantage to being an ally, maybe even a cost. What can they do? Is there a realistic, what's going to happen? Well, I think allies are going to start, it'll be gradual, is diversify their portfolios. A country like South Korea is going to have a much more serious debate about nuclear weapons of their own. Other countries are going to say, like Colombia, we don't really want to have 4/5 of our economy dependent on access to the United States. Maybe we dial it down. Maybe, by the way, we bring in China.
All right. Sounds like a bunch of globalists to me. We're gonna go to the Hill about the audit of the Fed for Doge. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver toothpaste that I offer. It has no fluoride. It has structural nanosilver. It'll whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, maintain and help heal your gum line, reduce inflammation, neutralize pathogens, and reduce plaque. With a good oral hygiene, you're going to reduce the chances of developing cardiovascular disease or valvular disease. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get a few tubes of this toothpaste, help support my work, help support your health. It's a very high quality toothpaste. It's the best toothpaste that you're going to be able to get. So you might as well help support my work and help support your health. It's a win-win situation. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the toothpaste and some of the other great supplements that I offer. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. All right. Let's go to the Hill. Which they do some good work.
Good morning and welcome to Rising. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are here delivering the news on this Monday morning following the Super Bowl, which always feels to me, Niall, like it should be a day off, but it's not a holiday, so here we are.
There is no day of rest, no rest from the news. Lots to talk about even after the Super Bowl, which we'll get to at some point in today's show. But first of all, Robin, what's on your radar?
Well, we'll save our Super Bowl takes for a little bit later. But first, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency is just getting started, and their latest plan could be to empower former Congressman Ron Paul, the godfather of the libertarian movement, to audit the Federal Reserve. Now, in a post on X, Musk responded to a friendly comment asserting that Doge should pick Paul to do just that, audit the Fed. In response, Musk said, "Good idea." Now, Senator Mike Lee went further, calling on President Donald Trump to name Ron Paul to be chairman of the Federal Reserve. I don't know if that's going to happen, but the Libertarian Party is obviously very excited at the possibility of Paul being involved whatsoever, tweeting that Paul auditing the Fed would be a, quote, nation-changing event. Libertarian activists have long advocated for an audit of the Federal Reserve since Ron Paul first proposed such a plan years and years ago. In fact, Paul has been pushing this issue since 1981. What does it mean? Simply put, auditing the Federal Reserve operating behind a cloak of mysteries would demystify some of that. The U.S.'s powerful central bank controls interest rates and ultimately the money supply, but very, very few Americans actually understand how that works. And the Federal Reserve is happy to keep it that way. Brian Doherty, my colleague at Reason Magazine, described the Fed in the following terms for an article about Paul's audit the Fed legislation. Quote, with its power over interest rates and the supply of U.S. dollars, the Federal Reserve System is the most influential economic institution on the planet. That influence comes surrounded by an impenetrable aura of mystery. Hardly anyone, citizen or congressman, completely understands what the Fed does, how it operates, or what the effects of its actions will be. End quote. Now, the purpose of auditing the Fed is to demystify the institution and allow government auditors from the Government Accountability Organization to open the books, scrutinize its dealings with foreign banks, and better understand why its 7-member board decides to raise and lower interest rates increase the money supply, and take all sorts of other actions that can cause or lower inflation. And many libertarians believe that this is actually the big prize. Cutting government, it's all well and good, of course, but until and unless the American people have more of a say, or at least more of an understanding of the actions of elite banking institutions to perhaps promote their own self-interest, we won't ever have a responsible monetary policy. The government can just print more money whenever it wants without disclosing its actions. Our fragile economy will ultimately always be in the hands of a small number of unelected bureaucrats. Shouldn't be just right-leaning people, by the way, who are in love with this idea, and it isn't. Progressive foes of powerful financial unaccountable interests should welcome greater disclosure, and in fact, some of them do. Some left-leaning people have expressed support for Paul's efforts to audit the Fed over the years. In fact, when Senator Ron Paul's son, proposed such a measure in 2016, Senate Democrats came together to block it, with two exceptions. Tammy Baldwin and, you guessed it, Bernie Sanders supported auditing the Fed. Now, I hope leftists like Sanders continue to offer support for the idea now that it could actually really be happening. I know a lot of people on the left are combative with Musk right now. Musk Doge is, of course, doing a lot of things progressives disagree with. I support them. It's acting to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. And greater accountability and transparency for financial institutions is actually the holy grail of government reform. This would be a big deal. Let's get it done. Audit the Fed. That's what I say.
I was listening to that with interest, Robbie, because this is a topic that I approach from a kind of place of curiosity rather than antagonism. I know that the slogan Audit the Fed has been not only a Ron Paul slogan, but a kind of a libertarian touchstone for a long time. And I think in principle, in theory, I don't have any problem with any government institutions having more scrutiny imposed upon them. I guess one of the concerns I think a lot of people would have is how you do this without exposing the Fed.
What's going to happen when you do audit the Fed is you're going to see that in the swap market with currencies, the Fed has been helping other countries without us really knowing about it with these swap agreements. All right? That will be exposed. Now, there's a group of people that want to prevent the audit because they don't want the market to know how the Fed is doing its open market operations, so the market doesn't demonize certain banks that need to go to the discount window. So they'll say that they've used, the discount operations, but it's always delayed. That information is always delayed. They'll inform the market, but it's delayed. So they'll issue a blue book and a beige book and maybe some other colored books. And each book has, meeting minutes and their policy of why they did what they did. But those books are usually lagging, all right? They did policy, but the details aren't forthcoming until later, all right? Weeks later, months later, whatever. Now, when they change the overall rate, that day there is an announcement, and some of the details are sift through during the speech that takes place after the Fed announcement. And then they take news questions and the Fed chair will answer them. Then usually the board or the governors that are on the board will go to the different news outlets and take questions too and give insight. But the details of what's in the beige book and the other colored books, that's not forthcoming until later. All right. So I think auditing is important, but again, keep in mind, there's a school of thought in economics that if you have banks that are stressed and they're going to be ostracized or turn into a pariah in the market and people start short selling their stock, if there's signs of stress and that they need to go to the discount window, then you're creating more market instability while the Federal Reserve is trying to create stability in the market. So that's one argument on why not to audit the Fed. Now the question is how frequently should the Fed be audited? Is it annually? Is it quarterly? Whatever. And if it's just annually, then it probably wouldn't cause that much of a disruption with banks that are needing to go to the discount window. All right. But I suspect that there are some activities that are going on by the Federal Reserve that are not in the best interest of the American worker. That there's these swap markets that I think that are more geopolitical, that really don't have much to do with finance. But I could be wrong. But I think that's not all swap markets are like that. Not all swap dealings by the Federal Reserve is nefarious. But I think that some are. That's where I would look at there. I wouldn't be surprised if there are other market operations that the Federal Reserve is doing that we don't know about. And maybe the audit will take a look at that. Now, do I think that there's impropriety by the governors on the way they trade their own personal portfolios? I think they have to go into a blind trust, and there's lots of regulation on that. So I don't think that there's individual people that are corrupt that's on the board or the chairperson or even the staff. I doubt that is happening, that there's insider trading within the Federal Reserve. I think in terms of that, I think they're very professional. But I think there's some nefarious things in market operations going on that the Federal Reserve has been told to do, either by the executive branch because of some sort of State Department issue, or even by Congress. So I don't think they're as independent as people think. All right, there are people that are telling them, certain people are telling them what to do. Now, I do think that the Federal Reserve cares less about the American worker and cares more about the banking industry. And because of that, there needs to be some sort of restructuring. Now, restructuring of the banks could be cut the fees, cap the fees for credit cards, cap the fees for checking accounts, cap the fees, doing these banking services, and not just cap the fees, but also the interest rates this is usury. What's going on with these banks? They're borrowing very cheap from the Federal Reserve, and they're charging huge amounts of interest on credit cards while they're not willing to give out business loans. It's hard to get a business loan from a bank, but it's easy to get a credit card. And the reason being is that the business loan interest is lower, credit card interest is much higher. Now, yes, there's defaults, and the banks have to model the defaults of the credit cards, but they're making a lot of money on interest. There needs to be regulation on the banks about how much they can charge for these cards. I mean, it's out of control, because what they're doing is they borrow cheap, and they lend it out through credit cards at a much higher interest rate. So the banking industry needs to be regulated. Why does the banking industry grow faster than the economy? How can that be if you're a developed economy? I can understand maybe a developing economy, but a developed economy where the banking industry grows faster, or stocks appreciate faster than the actual growth of the economy? No, that means that the banking industry is taking advantage of people. That's what that means. They're taking your money and trading it. I think that should stop too. Banks should not be able to trade money, to trade deposits. So major restructuring. Not only does the Federal Reserve need to be audited, but there needs to be more regulation on banks. Now, what's interesting with artificial intelligence, there are formulas that have been known for a long time to be able to adjust the monetary supply based on where the economy is. So if you have a growing economy, then you need to increase the money supply so you have the monetary base to be able to transact with that growing economy. But as the economy is contracting, then you need to shrink the money supply. All right? And you can do this in real time instead of periodically, like the Federal Reserve does. You can do it in real time with point of sale data. So POS data comes in to the Federal Reserve through an artificial intelligence algorithm, and then it can automatically adjust with its market operations, the money supply, based on that day's GDP, and adjust. Now you can give it a little range to work in, maybe a tolerance range. But the point here is just through artificial intelligence at the Federal Reserve level and getting POS data from all transactions in the United States, what would happen is that you can literally change the money supply, and it would be autonomous and it would be dynamic. That means that you can have an algorithm that guarantees that you can't create inflation through the money supply. That's the power of blockchain, and that's the power of AI at a central banking level. Now, I've had this idea going all the way back to when I finished my Ph.D., going all the way back to 2015. When you decash and everything goes digital, you have the blockchain to be able to track all transactions in the society. You can feed that to a central server and have an algorithm that is reading that real-time data and determining what the money supply should be at that moment in time, because it has calculated the GDP. And if the GDP is growing, then the monetary base needs to grow. If the GDP is shrinking, then the monetary base needs to shrink. And it's all dynamic in real time. So you never have inflation. Oh, wow, voila. Great idea, Dr. Paul Cottrell. I thought about that 10 years ago.
To political pressure, because there has been a problem, not just in the United States, but more so in other places that did not have independent central banks. It was the case in Britain up until Tony Blair became Prime Minister in the 1990s. The Bank of England was perceived as, I shouldn't say the Bank of England, it was perceived that interest rates were moved according to the political calendar and to try to benefit the party that was in power by lowering interest rates, for example, just before an election. You would then get a kind of feel-good factor, but it would be detrimental to the overall health of the economy and to the stability of the economy. Is that a danger here that it opens the Fed up to actual political interference?
Maybe, but I know that.
Is your marketing tech stack stuck in the past?
Indeed it is. Upgrade to AppsFlyer, the world's leading MMP.
Maybe, but I know that opponents of the Federal Reserve System would argue that the intention was never to make the Fed wholly independent of political considerations. And I tend to be a little bit suspicious of government entities that assert that they should be so independent that they suffer no political pressure. And it's a democracy. Ultimately, there should be some political pressure, and we reward or punish politicians who exercise such pressure. Now, we wanted the Fed, the intention.
The answer to this is to reduce the number of humans that are making the decision at the Federal Reserve, cut the staff, go autonomous with real-time data of where the economy is. The problem is that transactions aren't on blockchain yet. But the moment the transactions are on blockchain, you have real-time data to calculate real-time GDP at any moment. And you can dynamically change the money supply accordingly. So you can guarantee it from a monetary base point of view, it's not inflationary at any given moment in time. That's what would happen there. Now, what could cause inflationary pressures is overspending by the federal government. But in terms of money supply, you can dynamically adjust money supply if all transactions are on blockchain.
Independent of the executive, so that the president could not exercise such power. But the intention was never to make them wholly independent of Congress's authority.
So
Now,
what
of course,
happens
in
is
reality,
that if you have an algorithm that automatically does it, you don't need as much staff, so it's cheaper. And not only that, it's more accurate because it's real time. And not only that, it's autonomous. It's designed, it's code, its directive is never inflation. You can literally, with this technology that I'm talking about, if implemented, you could direct the AI to say never inflation, and you never have inflation because it's dynamically adjusting the money supply. So there is no political aspect to it. It's like a plane on autopilot in a way. All right. And the autopilot, button is pressed by the pilot and the plane is adjusting. Well, it gets a little bit of turbulence and it adjusts or whatever. Right? It's the same thing. It's very similar. As the economy is getting rough patches or easy sailing or whatever, it needs to adjust accordingly. But it does it in real time because it gets real-time transactional data. We can't do that right now because there's a lot of statistics and sampling, and it takes it's a month lag and blah, blah, blah. But if it's real-time data, you can do real-time dynamic adjusting of the money supply. So this is the reason why, this is one good reason why, I can think of many bad reasons, but this is one good reason why going digital currency and having an autonomous adjusting AI at the Federal Reserve to guarantee no inflation is a good idea. The bad idea is that when you have all these transactions on blockchain, they can track you. Not only that, if everything's digital, if they don't like you, they can turn you off and you can't transact. But if you really want to destroy the Fed power, really want to destroy it, give it to an AI and then gut it. Then gut the Federal Reserve. And the AI's directive is no inflation. Adjust accordingly so there's no inflation.
Weird just situation that our founders and the creators of our system never intended, where Congress and the executive don't share the combative. As branches of government, they are not combative. They are combative if one party, if it's two different parties in control of the two different branches. If it's the same party, they're not combative whatsoever. Congress wants to, for the most part, work to enact whatever the president wants. So we're kind of in tricky territory. Our system's not working the way it should. But if you look at the auditing in particular, it really is a mild proposal. And the kind of auditing that can already be done for the Fed is just wholly inadequate. And GAO, the Government Accountability Office, has said, yeah, we're authorized to do this much auditing, but we can't look at their significant proportions of their financial transactions, the leverage they perhaps exercise on other banks, including European banks. That's all, we're all shut out of that. We can't even look at it. It's so weird. They said we might as well not even do an audit if we're.
This is what I mean by the swap arrangements internationally. They just said what I just said earlier, right? There's some weird stuff going on with the swap market.
Not able to look at this category of transactions and things the Federal Reserve does. So this bill would give them just the same authority they could have to go after any other agency.
But so it would be the GAO who would be doing the auditing, I guess,
the GAO.
And then it would be to a degree insulated from partisan political pressure, even though it would be broadly politically accountable.
Correct. There could be some remedy proposed if it turns out bad stuff, perhaps by Congress. But GAO, they do investigations of government agencies. Sometimes I like their conclusions, sometimes I don't agree with their conclusions. But I think most people respect the work that they do and think it's solid, and then you can interpret it however you like. But that would be the first step, and that's why this measure has in the past drawn some support, as I said, from people like Bernie Sanders. The idea was percolating again on Twitter over the weekend because Elon responded to Ron Paul, get him back in there. Ron Paul is very elderly at this point in time. He is retired from Congress, and I think is enjoying his retirement. So I don't want to necessarily disturb him if he said his time has passed, but someone of a Ron Paul spirit to get in there and help see what's going on under the hood would be something that warms my heart, tickles my fancy, does all sorts of things to me.
Maybe Ron Paul could focus on another presidential run, of which he has made either 2 or 3 or more, I think, at this stage, but perhaps the time has passed.
Perhaps the time has passed. But I've always appreciated.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver gel in the tube or in the easy-to-use dispenser. It's a dual-purpose product. It's a skincare. It helps to heal wounds, and it'll help to neutralize problems that you may be exposed to during the cold season. Put it on your hands, put it around your nose, put it around your eyes, around your mouth, around your ears. Lightly coat your nostrils, and it'll stay active for 5.5 hours. You should have some at work, in your backpack, at home. Be prepared. Use it. Again, it's a dual purpose. You can put it on your skin at night. When you wake up, exfoliate, and you'll notice that your skin's clearer. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the very high quality structural nanosilver gels that I have. So use discount 5 and you get $5 off. It's all caps, discount 5, you get $5 off. Zeolite is really important to take to detoxify your body. Zeolite will help to get rid of heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. All right? We are exposed to chemicals and toxins through our water and our food. So you want to filter your water. You want to reduce your exposure to processed foods. And look at your home and try to clean out anything that you might be exposed to, or lock it up better, like paints or cleaning solutions. These things do get into the air and you start to breathe them in, and they affect your endocrine system and your immune system. So you want to filter, you want to get rid of those, or package them in a way where you're reducing the exposure to you on a daily basis. Take zeolite every day, take 2 drops underneath your tongue, small drops, drink the filtered water, and then do that every day, year round. It's a great way to soak up those toxins and chemicals, and once zeolite attaches to the toxin, it'll allow you to urinate it out in about 6 to 8 hours. Do that every day, and voila, you're detoxifying your body. Some people prefer to do a little bit more intense detox once or twice a year. So what you want to do is 4 or 5 little drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, do that once a day until the bottle's done, and do that once or twice a year. It's up to you, but it is better to do maintenance. Do the maintenance all year round. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the zeolite, get rid of the heavy metals, the toxins, the chemicals that are in your body causing disruption in your endocrine system and your immune system. Another great supplement that I've added to my stack that also helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney is NAC. NAC boosts up glutathione levels. That's a strong antioxidant. This is synergistic with C60. So glutathione soaks up free radicals one way. C60 soaks up free radicals another way. The more ways you soak up free radicals, the better off you are, because you're reducing the stress on the cells. Now, NAC, like I said, helps to detoxify the liver and the kidney, especially if you take acetaminophen. And NAC also helps to reduce anxiety. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the NEC, add that to your stack, do it every day to improve your health. All right, with that said, let's go to Al Jazeera. They're talking about Hamas.
Conversations about the potential repercussions of the step that has been made by the military wing of Hamas regarding the delay of the handing over of the Israeli captives who are scheduled to be released on Saturday. And they understand that this step has stemmed completely from the lack of commitment made by Israel regarding the implementation of the humanitarian protocol of the ceasefire deal. They saw how many aid trucks have entered Gaza. They saw the level of the change that has been made and what they still in a very desperate need to. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of families have returned back from their evacuation centers to the north of the Strait. They found nothing but holy destruction. They have set up their makeshift tents that they have been using for over 15 months of war on the ruins of their destroyed homes. As the first phase of the ceasefire agreement focuses on providing immediate and urgent humanitarian relief operations for Palestinians, including the entry of food items, medical supplies, along with tents and heavy machinery in order to start the clear-up operations across the Gaza Strip. But only what has been allowed to enter Gaza was completely a fraction of the basic necessities. No sort of enough amount of tents have been delivered to families in the north of the Strip, and everyone has seen completely what happened to families there. They were absolutely struggling to cope with the very harsh elements, and they are struggling to find water sources in the already battered northern part of the Gaza Strip. But for civilians on the ground, they believe that regional mediators will try to exert more pressure on both Hamas and Israel. But there is a very growing sentiment of skepticism now regarding how, to what extent, the ceasefire will be completely sustainable, as Israel has been widely showing its grave anger regarding the past release and the latest one of the Israeli captives over the deteriorating health conditions of the Israeli captives. But civilians understand that the more there's going to be a sort of obstacles have been thrown into the track of negotiations, the more fragile the ceasefire will be. And for them, the resumption of war means that the implementation of the statements and the plan of the President Donald Trump regarding the dispelling of Palestinians from their homeland, because they believe that once the war will resume, it means that more devastation and more high rates of killing will take place, which will have certainly far-reaching implications on civilians who have been bearing the brunt of the ongoing conflict. And now they believe that the next coming days will be absolutely fraught with different sorts of challenges, and that might be solved by regional mediators, but it depends on the level of concessions given and the scale of flexibility shown between both conflicting parties. But at the moment, there is a growing atmosphere of the skepticism and fear regarding the collapse of the ceasefire due to the very unpredictable repercussions that will take place on the ground. Tarek, just
all right,
take
I'm going
a
to go
step
back
for
to
us.
Bloomberg's balance of power here.
Depending on what the White House tells us later, about 35 minutes from now, at least on the schedule, President Trump will be signing some executive orders. They have not been detailed on the schedule, but we do expect one of them, maybe several of them, to address steel and aluminum tariffs. Questions about whether there'll be exemptions or double tariffing China. What about Canada, the primary source of steel on an export level in this country? We need to find all of this out still, and there will likely be market implications here. We're kind of dancing along listening to Charlie, and interesting that we haven't seen much action outside of the steel companies. We'll let you know what goes on there. As we turn to what I would argue is the most important story of the day, tariffs seem to come and go around here. The penny, not so much, though it may be going. That's the latest order from the President of the United States to the Treasury, which of course oversees the mint. Stop making the penny, he says, calling them wasteful. You do wonder about these executive orders, the stroke of a pen or a Sharpie impacting entire industries. or businesses, has anyone reached out to Coinstar at the grocery store? Stephen Dennis, as a matter of fact, has. Before this order went out, we were talking to Stephen about the veracity of the penny, the value of the penny, the staying power of the penny. Stephen covers Congress for a living, but is an expert on the penny. And he's with us right now at the table. Did I go too far with that? I feel like you're pretty close to an expert.
I found this penny issue fascinating for decades. For decades, we've spent more money to make a penny than the government gets back by selling them to banks, right? And so this is like such an old, issue. They actually made a West Wing episode about it. And people have been trying to kill it or to suspend the production of it. John McCain actually had a bill a number of years ago to stop minting them.
You can still use them.
Yeah, you still use them. I mean, there are something like 200 billion pennies in circulation.
Yeah, right.
So they're not going to go away overnight. Even if we stop minting them, we've been minting about 3 or 4 or 5 billion every year. And so that's potentially $100 million in less spending.
Yeah.
But, in the past, Congress has not wanted to take on the penny lobby. And
the penny lobby?
Yeah, so there's,
who are these guys?
There's pennies.org. There's a company in Tennessee called Artisan.
Were you referring to Americans for Common Sense?
Yeah, there's various groups out there that lobby to keep the penny.
Yeah.
And so you have the company that makes all the zinc blanks is in Tennessee called Artisan.
Okay.
So they make money off of the penny.
Which is not made of copper.
Oh, it still has some copper in it.
A little copper.
Mostly zinc.
And these people have real jobs at this place?
There's still lots of people who mine the zinc, mine the copper, make the stuff.
The trade is pennies.org. These guys they're not volunteers.
It used to be a company called Jardine Zinc. It's been around since the 1800s, making things like pennies.
Yeah.
And so, there could be a fight on Trump's hands here with people who represent districts where there are penny jobs. But this has been one of those classic cases of Washington not wanting to squeeze something because you have to take on somebody who's going to be lobbying to keep their piece of the pie.
Well, so Doge got a head start on this.
Yes.
And took to X saying the penny costs to make, consider that, and cost U.S. taxpayers over $179 million in FY 2023. Penny or 3 cents for your thoughts, it said. Donald Trump making the point that when do you think the last time Donald Trump used a penny?
I think it's unlikely he's used a penny. Just,
You ever know guys who throw the pennies out?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like minimum wage is now $7.25 an hour, still $7.25 an hour. You'd have to bend down 725 times every hour just to make minimum wage. Wow. And that explains why there are 200 billion in circulation.
Yeah.
People throw them out, people throw them into the river, the people put them in jars in their basements because nobody uses them. The only person I've seen using one in the last year in the U.S. Senate, where I eat every day, is Ed Markey. So he's
brought heat to the penny.
He's basically
when he bought lunch.
He's been in Congress for many decades. He's truly old school.
Yes.
He wants to mandate AM radio in every car.
Yeah, God love him.
He still uses pennies and sort of wadded up dollar bills to pay for his lunch. And but everybody else uses a card. So the demand for pennies is plummeting. Retailers tend to not like having to have cash registers waste their time sort of counting them. So
enter Coinstar.
Yeah, now Coinstar also, their entire business model is basically based on people not wanting to count them out and finding them useless. So they'll go to Coinstar and dump in hundreds of pennies to get like a gift card or something.
Yeah.
And, so I don't think Coinstar is going to be actually that hurt that much.
Because there's still a lot of dumb pennies.
People still have 200 billion pennies to turn in. Now that's only $2 billion. It's just, when you think about the actual amount of money involved here, it's pretty small.
Yes, right.
And that's the classic example in Washington where they say, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You actually want to squeeze it.
Yeah.
When, you're going to have to make some people unhappy.
We're getting the best of Stephen Dennis right now. I hope everyone who been choice.
Don't forget the nickel. Don't forget the nickel.
I'm about to go there because Ed Markey will be glad to know that the people at penny.org, penny or pennies? Pennies.org. Well, they see the nickel eating us alive.
Yes.
If you do away with the penny. Now, by the way, I was shocked to learn today that the nickel costs 13.78 cents to make. This is way worse than the penny.
Yeah.
And they say you take pennies away, you know what's going to happen? Drive up the cost of the nickel.
Well, and they also, people might use more
They're
nickels.
going to need more nickels.
Right. So, the next step would obviously be getting rid of the nickel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, nickel uses nickel, which is actually very important for things like EV batteries, right? So you have, you have Elon Musk. He uses a lot of nickel in his Teslas.
Correct.
Right now, we're like digging nickel out of like an island mine in the South Pacific.
We're surrounded by it.
And using some of that nickel in nickels, right? So the nickel costs a lot more than we currently get back to
now,
the
Canada's done this, right? They just round everything up to
lots of countries have gotten rid of it, and it's no big deal.
So that it would be $9.95 from now on. If it had been $9.91, you're going to go to. We're probably not going to notice.
This. Congress could theoretically come in and pass a law to govern the rounding up, rounding down part of this.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it might be just sort of like anything goes.
This is a fascinating conversation in the age of blockchain.
Yeah.
Is there an eventual goal to eliminate all the coins here, all the physical coins, so we're doing digital coins?
I mean, if you think about the inflation that we've had and the inflation we're going to continue to have, even if we get down to the 2% target, eventually all these coins become worthless. You're going to, the dime might stick around a little longer. The quarter currently make a profit on. That's not going to last another 100 years. So, and the reality is fewer and fewer people are using physical money. They are using their credit cards. They're using their debit cards. That trend is going to continue. And then you've got people talking about, well, we can do stable coins. You can have a stable coin card. You go to Walmart, use the Walmart stable coin card. There's already talk of, doing all that sort of thing as well. Nobody's using pennies. Like, there are a few people who say, well, charities use it in the, holidays. You can go to the Salvation Army and dump your pennies into the, but that's still a lot of friction, to actually give somebody some money. And this may be the time the pennies finally go away, but it's also possible that Congress says no. Because on Article 1, Congress has the power to make coins. Now, they've given the Secretary some discretion. The Secretary has some discretion on how many to make. So I would be surprised if the Treasury Secretary, says, we'll mint 10,000 this year.
Well, it's funny to think, Congress doesn't have a lot to say about ending entire federal agencies, but you mess with the penny, you're flying a little close to the sun.
Yeah.
Pennies are made of zinc, little copper.
Yeah.
Is there steel in any of this stuff? Do the steel, aluminum tariffs?
No,
but
there was a proposal by Joni Ernst who kind of got the ball rolling here with Doge. She's the co-chair of the Doge caucus. She had a bill with the Democrats to change the composition of pennies, nickels, and other things to make them a little cheaper.
Yeah.
Not to get rid of them entirely, but to make them a little cheaper than 3 cents for a penny. So you could make them out of something cheaper.
Yeah.
But that bill doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Anytime you're doing something like this, you're gonna have a zinc lobby, a copper lobby. You're gonna have the nickel lobby.
Yes.
They're not going to want to lose their money. The unions aren't going to want to lose their
penny
jobs.
lobby and the nickel lobby, like they have like chain fights in the parking lot. Are these guys opposed?
It does seem.
I've never met any of them.
It does seem to be every metal and every coin out for themselves.
It seems like maybe they could band together for the greater good. Now, next time I find like a green gross penny in a pocket or in the couch or whatever, it's kind of corroded. Am I saving that for posterity? Or there's just so many of them that they're going to be worthless?
I think unless they're an old penny, that they're basically worthless.
Got it.
There's 200 billion out there. There's think about how big that number is. That is a stupefyingly big number. It might be the most common thing out there other than like dental picks. It is, and people aren't saving those either. So like,
This is just, this is the kind of stuff you learn when you talk to Stephen Dennis in the pantry, in the hallway. This is the kind of man you want to have in the newsroom. Thank you for bringing your expertise to us here.
Sure,
On
anytime.
balance of power when it comes to the mighty.
I'm going to be going to Fox News here. They're talking about James Carville. That was posted about 1 hour ago. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get vitamin K2 and K7. This helps with your cardiovascular health and your bone health. Stack it with D3. And when you do that, you're going to be able to absorb your calcium. And when you do resistance training, you're going to be depositing new bone. And over time, you're going to increase your bone density. But you have to do resistance training, taking calcium, and take the vitamin K2 and the vitamin D3 together. Now, this will also help with your cardiovascular health because this will slow down the depositing and prevent the depositing of calcium in plaque formation within your artery. But you can stack it with nattokinase, and taking nattokinase D3 and K2 together is a really great stack for cardiovascular health. Nattokinase is fibrinolytic, so it breaks up clots, but also nattokinase brings down LDL levels and increases your HDL levels. That means it's improving your total cholesterol. And so when you have less LDL, you're reducing the chances of new plaque formation. So please stack nattokinase, D3, and K2 together to help with your cardiovascular health. And when you stack D3 and K2 together, you're helping your cardiovascular health and your bone health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5, get the nattokinase, get the D3, and get the vitamin K2. This is the MK7 molecule. So it works. You do it every day. You're going to improve your bone structure. You're going to also improve your cardiovascular health. So use discount 5, all caps, number 5, and get $5 off on any order. All right, let's go to Fox News about James Carville.
On Capitol Hill, Democrats are calling for more aggressive tactics to resist President Trump's reform agenda, even if it means a government shutdown. What? Kaylee McEnany, Guy Benson are here with more.
Morning.
Yeah, so here are Cory Booker and Andy Kim. They were on the Sunday shows. This was them talking about how they want to resist.
The strategy is to do whatever we can to stop Donald Trump from hurting Americans, from making us less safe.
Resist. All right. Cory Booker from New Jersey. All right. He's Senator Cory Booker. He wants to resist like it's some Black Panther movement. You notice the Democratic Party has now aligned themselves with the ultra libs, and they're going to resist the power. Watch. They're ramping it up. They're ramping it up. When during the election cycle, the general election cycle, remember what the Democratic Party leaders were saying. Be quiet. Don't, not too much disruption. And then they were hoping that Kamala would win the election. Harris would win the election. She didn't win, obviously. Well, now they're ramping it up. They're ramping it up. Now we're going to start seeing the towns get burnt down, and the BLM movement is going to start to get rebooted. They're going to resist. More violence in the street, more racial tension between whites and blacks. Watch. And Cory Booker is leading it.
Secure and from raising our costs.
You are open to voting yes to shut down the government, to make this point.
This is on that. We are at a point where we are basically on the cusp of a constitutional crisis, seeing this administration taking steps that are so clearly illegal.
Now think about this. I've been going on this stream for 3 hours, okay? Early on, in the first hour, we were talking about how the Democrats were demonizing Trump for cutting USAID and shutting down discretionary payments on certain agencies because so many people would be out of a job. Don't you think that them shutting down the government is going to lay off government workers? So what is it? Are they really worried about people's jobs, or are they more worried about the optics, trying to look like they're resisting so they get voters to vote for them during the midterm elections in 2026? You can't have it both ways, Democrats. What is it? You don't want Trump to cut the wasteful spending so workers aren't laid off at these agencies? Or do you want to shut down the government and lay off workers? Which is it, Democrats? You can't have it both ways. You know what it is? The Democratic Party are a bunch of whiners. Whiners. Whine, 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 whine. That's all they do. They whine. They don't really have a good argument. They're going to shut down the government, put workers on furlough, government workers on furlough, threaten that certain payments aren't being made. Meanwhile, they're complaining that Trump is cutting wasteful spending and some workers are going to be laid off. If you want to look at the net present value of this, what Trump's doing is surgical. What they're doing with shutting down the government is a blunt force that's going to cause more wasteful spending in the long run. So which one is more economically feasible? Which one is actually a better plan for the future? Trump's plan, targeted layoffs of certain government agencies, or a massive shutdown? What is it? The Democrats always fail. They fail, 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 fail.
Change that behavior. We should not allow and condone that, nor should we assist in that.
And NBC News has this headline, Kaylee: "We are figuring it out. Democrats struggle to keep up with Trump's dizzying pace." They don't know where to look.
I bet they are, because Trump has done more executive orders in 10 days than most presidents, I think, if not all, have done in 100 years. So that is a dizzying pace. But Andy Kim, he went on to say, we're on the cusp of constitutional crisis. That's the new buzzword, because I heard Chris Murphy say it's a constitutional crisis.
Oh, so the bat signal's gone out.
Yes, it's as if they've not learned that the existential rhetoric did not work. The threat to democracy, not to mention, we have sound on wolf. We could pull up at any moment from December. Hakeem Jeffries talking about government shutdowns hurting working people and those affected by hurricanes. What happened to that logic? It's out the window 60 days later.
Speaking of logic, James Carville has another twister here. All right, just go ahead and play this with his unique idea right now inside the party.
It is like there's a plant somewhere in, quote, progressive, unquote, America that just sees how many stupid things that they can embrace. It's stunningly stupid, both of them.
I actually would have liked to say that on camera. It is stunningly stupid when the greater majority of Americans, they got to balance their own budget. And they're telling Washington, go ahead and do it as well. Right. And now they're giving it a try. And the Democrats, like Andy Kim and others, are saying, you keep doing that, we're going to shut this place down.
Exactly.
It
shows the corruption. The Democrats know that there's corruption.
They're leaning into that. Another phrase that we're hearing, an argument repeatedly from the Democrats, is no one elected Elon Musk or his team.
What it is the Democrats know that Elon's going to find the corruption, and it's going to go right to Nancy Waters, right to Pelosi, right to the Bidens, right to the national security state. I'm willing to bet that the Treasury Department has been sending Social Security checks to dead people, but live people are cashing them. And those people are still on the voter registry to vote for Democrat. But I'm willing to bet that if you drill down even further, that these dead people that are getting Social Security checks probably voted for Harris. Now, how did that happen if they're dead?
from the party that has fully supported to the hilt every federal bureaucrat forever, who are unelected, faceless people who make all sorts of decisions with our money and have forever, for decades. Now, one person who's unelected making some recommendations with a team and trying to find efficiencies to reduce the size of government and the scope of government, that's the crisis. And who elected them? That logic, that argument could be easily applied to the bureaucratic state that they are defending, possibly with a government shutdown. And I haven't heard them grapple with that hypocrisy at all. No one's.
This is what I said in late 2023, when, shortly after October 7th, I said it, I think it was October 10th. The ultra-libs, the ultra-liberals are going to be eating their own tail. They're going to eat themselves. That's what's going to happen. Their logic is going to be, it's circular logic, and they're going to eat themselves alive. And we're seeing it play out right here.
I wonder if there'll be any pushback from many of our colleagues in the media. So far, not so much, which isn't exactly a surprise.
They're literally,
I read this
the
morning
Democratic
in
Party,
a subset
the
of the
Democratic Party are literally retarded. They're literally retarded, like medically defined retards.
And they're pretty moderate Democrats saying, perhaps going after Elon Musk all the time is not the best bet. Here's a couple or five here, guys. These are voters to ABC and how they support Musk and Trump.
It's pretty characteristic of Elon Musk. And I think that, the whole idea of coming in and looking at government efficiency was going to be very disruptive. By design, immigration was a top concern, safety and security. It was one of the things that swayed me. So I'm glad to see bold action because I think it's needed.
I'm not entirely certain that he's going about it the right way. I do think that what he is setting out to do needs to be done.
So it's like getting the same goal. May not be the right way to do it. Who knows? We'll see. But they like what they're seeing.
They like what they're seeing because he's not touching Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. He's not touching the big three that really affect all Americans. He's finding common sense items like the penny. I mean, who would have thought that we're watching the Super Bowl and Trump says, I've instructed the Treasury Secretary not to keep producing the penny because it costs 2 cents to produce it. These are common sense things. Most Americans think about and think, oh, okay, if you're going to cut that waste, let's do it. Can it be disruptive? Sure. That's why with USAID, for instance, preserving PEPFAR funding and whatnot is very important. But he's disrupting the system, fixing the problems with Band-Aids along the way.
So I told Brett last night that Department of Education would be next, Pentagon would be next. And he's convinced you're going to find millions of dollars, if not more than that, inside of those departments as well. In the end, if this works, Guy, we could look back on this moment as saying, you made our government better.
Yep.
Yeah, and that would be a good thing, especially in some of the low-hanging fruit. And I think it would be definitely in the billions. At the least, that you would save. And a lot of these gigantic, unaccountable bureaucratic agents.
The Doge clock estimates right now, at this moment in time, $36.7 billion of savings so far. Their goal is $2 trillion. But right now they have found $36.7 billion of savings.
And look, the idea that there's no oversight whatsoever, now there's congressional oversight. The judges are already fielding the lawsuits, right? The judicial side of the government, that element will also look at this. So I think the way the Democrats are talking about it, like Elon Musk has this band of unaccountable people that got torches and they're storming the castle and just, burning everything to the ground. It's not actually what's happening. It feels like the Democrats are casting about for something to coalesce around to find a purpose again. And they've chosen this. They've chosen defending federal bureaucrats and illegal immigrants, which are some interesting priorities that they've settled on. Maybe they could have waited for a better one, but here we are.
Maybe Carvel's right.
Mick Carville sometimes is right.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let's listen to Al Jazeera here.
Shelter in terms of roof over the family's head, and let alone schools and hospitals and everything else, and even potentially food in the weeks to come. Basically, it will not be livable, and there's only one answer for that, is for them to leave. Quickly, Doreen, let me just add to this.
So a lot is happening here. So there's a rally going on where people are saying protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, you know, and trying to prevent DOGE from making it more efficient. There's two parts to these programs, the end user and the administration. Now, if you can streamline the administration where it's more efficient, then that would mean that either more money goes to the end user for Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid, or the same amount goes to the end user and less is spent. So it's more efficient because you got rid of the dead weight that's in the administration. Don't be fooled by Democrats saying that when you cut funding for Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security, that doesn't mean you're cutting funding to the end user. It can mean that you're reducing the administrative burden. And the end user may actually get more money. You could, let's say that Medicare, I'm just making up the number, but let's say Medicare gets $10 billion and $8 billion goes to the end user, but $2 billion goes to administrative. Let's say you can cut $1 billion of that administrative cost. So now the budget really is only $9 billion. Now you could just say, okay, we're going to give $10 billion to Medicare, but now instead of $8 billion that goes to the end user, it's $9 billion that goes to the end user, and only $1 billion that goes to administration. Or you can do it another way. Say $1 billion is cut for Medicare, but nothing is cut for the end user, only the administration, only the office workers. So don't be fooled by the emotional fallacy that they're doing here, where they're trying to mix up what it really means to make an agency or a program in government more efficient. Because the end user is most likely going to get the same amount when it comes to Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid, and very possibly get more in the end. But the administration, the administrative state, gets less. And that's what they're really fighting for. They don't care about the end user. They're trying to protect the administrative state. They want you to think they're protecting the end user. So let's just for a little while, just go into the rally, listen to their rhetoric.
A legal fight, and on days like this, a street fight.
BLM.
We're listening here to Representative Puisi and Fume there in Maryland, Baltimore, just outside of the Social Security Administration headquarters. We do have to step away for another brief commercial break here at Live Now from Fox, but we'll continue with more from this live event when we come back.
All right, let's go to Bloomberg here. But the point I'm making is they want to demonize what Trump's administration is doing to find the wasteful spending. All right, and these protesters, these Democrats, want you to think that cutting funding to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security means the end user gets less money. That is not what's happening. The end user might actually get more money.
Some differences between this time and last time. I do think, and I will credit her every time I talk, that Susie Wiles has been able to bring some stability to this administration. I actually think, I was listening to Trump's interview from yesterday. He said, I didn't know Washington, 4 years ago. I didn't know how it ran. I made some decisions that were poor. I probably wouldn't have made them this time. I've had 4 years to prepare. And so it is, even though it may not seem like it, because everything's coming so fast and furious right now, there is a little bit more structure than there was last time. But going back to something Jeannie said just quickly about, if JFK does something that's outside the norm on vaccines and things that he said he wouldn't do, he can be fired very quickly. So even though he's confirmed, doesn't mean that he will stay for 4 years.
Yeah, well, and since you mentioned RFK Jr., we've only got a minute here, Jeannie. As you know, Rick Davis used to talk about blue MAGA the fact that these are both former Democrats actually improved their chances because Donald Trump wanted to say he had Democrats in the fold. Is that true?
You know, I don't know that it increased their chances of getting confirmed in the Senate because we don't see yet many Democrats willing to support them. But I do think it's in keeping with what Donald Trump has been saying he would do on the campaign trail, which is that there are issues like the case of RFK Jr. as it pertains to health and this whole MAHA movement. And those are important to Donald Trump. And so those two nominees reflect that kind of ability to co-opt some Democratic talking points.
But where are these nominees on the penny? I have no idea on any of them. Jeannie and Ashley will be with us in our second.
All right, let's go back to the live now rhetoric with this rally.
Like Senator also Brooks, I spent quite a lot of time, and like Administrator O'Malley, we spent a lot of time as executives. We know a thing or two about finding waste, finding efficiencies, and we do welcome that conversation. But there is a way to do it. President Trump, you have the White House, you have control of the House and the Senate. Come to the table. Let's have the conversation. Let's have Republicans in that.
No, what they want to do is they don't want someone to do the wrecking ball. What they want is to represent K Street, so Trump's executive branch doesn't cut the efficiency that really needs to be cut. There's a lot of waste that we can cut. All right. Elon's finding it. It's not theoretical, it's there. But you have representatives in Congress and in the Senate that are on the take. They either benefit tangentially because of the wasteful spending, or they represent a lobbying group that benefits from it. So come to the table. These representatives aren't we the people representing we the people at all. These representatives are representing K Street. These representatives are representing Big Pharma and Big Ag and Big whatever. That's what he means by come to the table and let's find the meeting of the minds. So in essence, what they're going to do is to say, yes, you're right, there's going to be some wasteful, but we're not going to really cut all of it because Big Ag needs some take because of USAID. Or Big Pharma. You can't cut too much at the NIH because Big Pharma needs a cut. No. Cut all the wasteful spending and find out what the government really needs in terms of its budget. And then from there, you can decide setting priorities. These people that are pushing for wasteful spending, they are on the losing side of the argument.
This country has ever built Social Security, where before more than half of seniors lived and died in poverty.
See, emotional fallacy, trying to demonize Trump, scaring the end user, thinking that their benefits will be cut. How they done? No one said that. Trump specifically said no benefits to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid are going to be touched. But the administration may be laid off. So they're demonizing Trump and scaring the end user.
Mr. Musk, who has billions of dollars in self-interest with contracts with this federal government and foreign governments, has his hands on our data and is systematically coming for civil servants across this country.
Well, wait a minute here. Where was the outcry with the NSA taking your data without your permission and lying to Congress about it? Where is the outcry? I trust Elon Musk a hell of a lot more than the national security state. These people are idiots.
And so we need to fight with every ounce of our being. Thank you for being here today. We are in the minority in the House and the Senate, and so you are so important. You are.
They are in the minority of logic. They have none. They don't have logic with their argument. They're definitely in the minority with this. You're telling me that most of Americans would prefer wasteful spending? Meanwhile, their grocery bills keep on going up and up and up. Their housing costs keep on going up and up and up. The little person, we the people, do not get benefit from this wasteful spending. It's big corporations that do. These people are bullshit, I tell you. This is the reason why I can't stand even talking to Democrats. They're idiots.
Vietnam, some friends in the neighborhood here and around the world suggesting, to your point, maybe the need for some exemptions. China, not so much. And there's a question about whether they're actually now under double tariffs, because that first round the president just announced the 10% just took effect. So maybe we get a 1-2 punch here with steel and aluminum. We don't know. We'll find out when the president's in the Oval with some reporters.
Yeah, we'll see how many headlines he makes. He has a tendency to make a lot of them when he's signing executive orders these days. And I wonder, too, if he's going to weigh in on the work of the Department of Government Efficiency and the legal challenges that DOGE and this administration is running into when it comes to their efforts to trim down the government. We'll get into all of that this hour with Mick Mulvaney, former acting chief of staff in the first Trump White House. But we begin, as always, with a check on the markets. And go to Charlie Pellet in New York. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Kelly. We have got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing back to work Monday. Stocks are kicking off the week with gains, rebounding after last week's slide, driven by concerns over inflation and tariff threats. Right to the numbers with the S&P up 38 now, 6,065. That is a gain of about 0.6%. Dow Industrials up 108, up by 0.2%. And the NASDAQ Composite Index up 225 now, up by 1.1%. The 10-year at 4.48%, the 2-year 4.26%. Spot gold up $42 the ounce with a $2,900 handle, $2,903 right now on the precious metal. Yes, a record up by 1.5%. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.9%. 72.35 a barrel, and Bitcoin now up 2.3%, 97,450 on gold. Tariff talk out of Washington. Shares in aluminum and steel companies are all advancing. Among some of those names, Cleveland Cliffs up now by 18.8%. Nucor among the steel companies up 7.2%, and U.S. Steel up by 4.7%. And among aluminum names, Alcoa out of Pittsburgh. Alcoa shares, they're advancing 3.6%. Century Aluminum shares up 10.9%. And Kaiser up now by 2.9%. Recapping, stocks higher. S&P up 0.6% for on-demand news 24 hours a day. Subscribe to Bloomberg News now, wherever you get your podcasts. And Balance of Power continues right now. Back we go to Washington. Once again, your hosts, Joe Matthew and Kaylee Lyons.
All right, before we go back, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. NAD Plus helps to heal your DNA damage. So that's very important as you get to about 40 plus years of age. You start accumulating DNA damage and you need to take supplements to help repair that DNA damage. So please take NAD Plus to help repair DNA damage in your cells and also in your mitochondria, because your mitochondria also has DNA. But NAD Plus brings up energy levels, and NAD Plus helps to protect neurons. Extremely important for people 40 plus years of age. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10. Most people that take CoQ10, you're taking the low bioavailable CoQ10. This is the best bioavailable CoQ10 that you can buy. All right. So taking ubiquinol, the active form for CoQ10, the most bioavailable, will soak up free radicals, help the health of your mitochondria, your energy levels will increase, and it will also help protect your neurons. This is the reason why it's so important when you're 40 plus years of age to start taking ubiquinol every day. Very important to take supplements that protect your neurons, but also do exercising. You need to activate those neurons. And you activate those neurons by doing resistance training, doing stretching, doing balancing, because you're activating your cerebellum and learning new things. Read, write, talk to people in the real world, and you're going to have positive neuroplasticity. So please go to my store, get the ubiquinol, protect your neurons. This is synergistic with the NAD+, the resveratrol, and the C60. And since we're talking about C60, C60 is a very potent antioxidant, extremely potent. Take a teaspoon a day. I take a teaspoon a day, and I've been taking it for a long time. Now, what this will do is it'll soak up free radicals. How it works is it's a carbon molecule of 60 carbons in a molecule. It looks like a soccer ball, a buckyball, or a fullerene. And it will soak up free radicals almost 1,000 times more per molecule than vitamin C. Now, this will soak up those free radicals, and you're reducing the stress in the cell. And so when your cells are less stressed, your tissues perform better. And when your tissues perform better, your organs perform better, your glands perform better. That means your immune system performs better. That means your endocrine system performs better. That means your organs perform better. Really important. In addition, by soaking up those free radicals, you're improving the health of your mitochondria. So your ATP is going to boost. That means you're going to have more energy in your cells. That also means that you're going to have more ATP in your neurons. And you need ATP to get those neurons firing, to make those neurotransmitters. So that will help with that neuroplasticity. Remember what I said? C60 is synergistic with NAD+ and ubiquinol. So if you want to protect your neurons, you better start taking C60. Or when you're in your geriatric years, you're going to start having gait problems. You're going to be shuffling like an old person. All right? You really want to do that? Or you want to mitigate it? Because once your neurons start to go, in the central nervous system, it's a little too late. So taking C60, again, soaks up free radicals, boosts up your ATP because it improves the mitochondrial health. You need a lot of mitochondria for your neurons. And by doing that, you're bringing down the stress in the cell, and you're improving your immune system, and you're improving your endocrine system. That means you're getting healthier. And because you're soaking up all these free radicals and your tissues are healthier, that means you slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60 either in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. You can get it in an MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, or avocado oil. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60, use discount 5, and get $5 off. I want you to take this product to get healthy. Soak up those free radicals, and you'll see huge benefits. If you've never done this before, just take my advice for 1 year. Let's say you're just, it's 2025 and you're saying you want to get healthy. Take the initiative to start now. Take these supplements and do it, write a journal or something. How you feel right before you start the protocol, and then, taking the supplements, whichever ones that you want to take, for a year. And then document your journey. And what you're going to notice is that you're going to have more energy. You're going to recover if you're working out. You're going to have, better immune system and a better endocrine system. You're just going to feel healthier. And when you feel healthier, when you are healthier and you have more energy, you're going to move around more. Just do that one experiment for 1 year, and you're going to see huge benefits. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get this C60. Use discount 5. I want this product in your hands and use it. And follow that core protocol that I have. Max 35, boost up your immune system. The second pillar, C60, soak up those free radicals. The third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, bring down inflammation, chronic inflammation. And taking Boomer Boost to boost up your energy levels and your metabolism. When you do all that, you're going to be super healthy. All right? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60. Now, people have been watching me for 5 years, and I've been telling you what my protocol is almost on every video. All right? And how to stack and how to slow down the aging process. Now, I haven't aged in 5 years. You know, physically. I have, you know, obviously, I'm 5 years older, you know, chronologically. But biologically, I have not aged that much. Now, compare that to Alex Jones 5 years ago and DrPaulCottrell 5 years ago. And then fast forward to today. Who aged really well and who aged really poorly? Now, who do you want to trust in terms of what sort of supplements and how to stack it do you want to trust? You want to trust Alex Jones? That's a fat pig. That's aged like a I don't know, you know, like a I don't know, a warlock? Or do you want to listen to how I stack it? Because I've been doing this, I've been playing around with this types of stuff since I was 16 years old. And over time, the supplements and how to stack and the science and the integrative medicine and the holistic approach, that body of knowledge has built up. And there's a lot to be learned from the anti-aging and the longevity crowd. And I'm giving that to you. I'm giving you that knowledge. And it's stuff that I do. The proof's in the pudding. Do you really think that Alex Jones takes his supplements? Or if he is it working? Really? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Follow my protocol because it fucking works.
We're against the law. I'll give you a specific example. Dodd-Frank, which creates CFPB, specifically says that CFPB has no jurisdiction over automotive dealerships. But under Richard Cordray, the Bureau went after automobile dealerships anyway, despite the law. There's lots of examples like that. So I think it was a renegade agency. I think that they're having the right discussion now. So I said, look, let's shut the doors, figure out what's going on. We're still paying everybody. They can't fire everybody. Just try to see if they're actually serving their statutory purpose.
Well, they made an important point there about the funding structure, that this is funded through the Federal Reserve. It's not money appropriated by Congress, even if the agency itself was authorized via an act of Congress. So is there a distinction you draw here between these efforts at the CFPB and what's going on, for example, at USAID, which has run into problems in courts because that is congressionally appropriated money that they're trying not to spend?
It's a great point, Kaylee. And what I tell people is that, you know, when Liz Warren created—
It's a great point, but there's discretionary and non-discretionary. So there's a nuance.
To trust to elected officials, and you had to have this dedicated funding source so that the funding couldn't get turned on or off depending upon who was in Congress. She did that. The double-edged sword of that is that when Rohit Chopra is running the place and Congress wants to shut them down, he can sort of go and get his money without having to worry about what Congress thinks. But the other side of the sword is that Russ Voters is running the place and he doesn't want to draw any money down from the Fed. He doesn't have to. So even if Congress wants him to spend money, he's really a benevolent dictator on his own over the CFPB. And so you're seeing the other side of this equation when he says, look, I'm not drawing any money. I'm not going to spend any. You know, what's your next move in the court system?
Funding, of course, is one thing, Nick. If you wanted to eliminate the agency, would you need congressional approval for that? And will Donald Trump essentially just zero out, as you said, the budget and let it sit there and wither, or does it need to be closed with the authority of Congress?
this is what we struggled with. I did not believe that as director, I had the right to shutter the place. I thought the president probably had the right to tell me to shutter the place. My guess is that's what they're doing this time. If you really wanted to, axe the thing entirely to make it cease to be, that would take an act of Congress. But I think it's up to the president and the director, again, as this quasi-benevolent dictator, to determine the scope of what the agency, the Bureau, does. And that could be a really, really, really broad scope like under Richard Cordray or Rich Chopra, or very, very narrow under myself, Kathy Cranigan, and now Russ Vogt.
Well, I do wonder where this would come down on the congressional priorities list, Mick, considering the legislative priorities of the president, tax policy, energy and border policy, trying to get it all through the budget reconciliation process. Doesn't seem like it's making much progress forward, at least in the House. Mike Johnson had suggested we could see a budget markup this week. Now he's suggesting maybe it won't be on that timeline. Lindsey Graham is trying to move first in the Senate. How do you ultimately see this going down? Is it going to be 2 bills instead of 1?
Yeah, it's going to be whatever it takes to pass. And I think this focus on 1 bill versus 2 bills, of course, I think President Trump had it right. He came out and said he wanted 1 big, beautiful bill. And then the next day said, I don't really care as long as it passes. And I think that's what.
Well, I guess the question then, Mick, is can 2 bills pass this House of Representatives?
The better question is, can 1 pass? So I mean, take the simplest look.
Sure.
Here's going to work. You know this. You've been around long enough to do. You're going to have 5 or 6 ideas. You're going to have taxes, you're going to have immigration, you're going to have deregulation, a bunch of stuff. And you're going to sort of throw them together and say, okay, if we add 1 more thing, do we gain net votes or do we lose net votes? And they're going to keep adding and subtracting different big pieces of the puzzle until they figure out a way to get a majority plus 1 in the Senate, in the House. That's the way this is going to shake out. Honestly, it's going to be hard to pass anything. It really, really is. There's deep divisions within the Republican Party about how much money they want to save. Other folks just want to spend it. And what the priorities are between immigration, taxes, et cetera. It's going to be very, very difficult with a margin of, what are they down to this week? I think 2, maybe 1, depending on who got confirmed in the last 48 hours. It's going to be hard to pass anything. That's why I say, look to the Senate, because I think they'll probably start driving this discussion on that side of the building.
Wouldn't be the first time that happened, Mick, and it's not the first time that we're hearing threats of a government shutdown. I've only got a minute left here, but both senators from New Jersey went on Sunday morning television to threaten a government shutdown. We're going to run out of money on March 14th in protest of what the DOJ is doing and what the administration is doing to gut, in their words, federal agencies. Is this finally it? We shut down in March?
You forget that I was the one who tried to coin the term Schumer shutdown back a couple of years ago. It didn't stick at the time. But if they want to try and do this, that's fine. Look, if the Democrats want to go to the mat because of DOJ, we welcome that as Republicans. Even if Elon Musk is not popular individually, the stuff he's turning up is solid gold material for us, for midterm elections, for presidential elections. People don't like what they're learning about how their money is being spent at USAID. And I don't care if they're progressive or conservative for the most part. So yeah, let's have that discussion. If Democrats want to go to the mat on this one, I think the Republicans will really welcome it.
I think that was a bring it on.
Yeah, sounded like it.
Shut it
It's good
down.
to see you. Mick Mulvaney back with us.
Just have the battle royale between the Democrats or between Trump and the Democrats. Let's put it that way. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I was talking about the core and the 4 pillars of my protocol for health. That last pillar, to boost up your energy levels and to supercharge your metabolism, take Boomer Boost. This is a powder. You mix it with soft foods or filtered water. Some people mix it with milk. Some people make a shake out of it, like a smoothie or a shake. But take it every day. Take it once a day. There's a big scooper here. You take 1 scoop, take it every day, however you want to mix it, either for breakfast or for lunch is the best way to do it. And that will be your meal for either breakfast or lunch. You will save money because I'm sure the cost of this container of material is cheaper for 1 month than what you spend for breakfast or lunch. But you'll lose weight And what's going to happen is you're going to have energy. All right. And if you work out and you use this as a pre or post workout powder, you're going to also recover quicker. You'll notice that your recovery time is a lot better, and you have more energy during your workout. But that's if you are an athlete and you need to fuel your body because you're an athlete. But most people are not athletes. You can still take this for breakfast or lunch. Take it once a day, and you'll notice that your energy levels are going up, your metabolism is going up, and you're losing weight. Now, it has 68 nutrients. Go to my store and look at the label to look carefully at the actual profile. It's pretty extensive. This is very powerful stuff. And what will happen is that it targets different systems. Not only are you improving your energy levels and your metabolism, but it's going to improve your cardiovascular health. And it's going to improve your brain health and your muscles. You're going to have more energy and more strength. Now, this couples really well with gladiator barley or heirloom barley, but you can take it separately. But to get more kick out of this, take the barley too. So let's talk about the different barleys that I have. The barley is a protein, high density protein, all right? Now, the barley here is much higher quality than any barley that you're going to get at the store. Okay, the nutritional value that the barley that you're getting at the store is diminished. This is supercharged because it's an heirloom. So gladiator barley is focused on giving you higher strength levels, especially when you do resistance training, bringing down inflammation, soaking up free radicals with superoxide dismutase, and detoxifying your body. So I recommend that you take the gladiator barley, no matter if you are an athlete or a non-athlete, take them together, and you're going to get huge benefits in terms of metabolism and strength and detoxification and soaking up free radicals and bringing down inflammation. Now, if you're an athlete and you're taking this, you're going to notice your recovery time is quicker because you're reducing that inflammation, and you're going to have you're fueling your body, gaining the strength, and you're increasing your ATP levels. But ones that are not athletes and doing just a little bit of resistance training, what's going to happen is you're going to have, you're doing a little bit of resistance training, the gladiator barley. There's someone outside that's backing up, and you're hearing the noise. I apologize. So the gladiator barley, if you're not an athlete and you're just doing some resistance training, you'll notice that you're recovering quicker and you're gaining more strength. This stacks really well with ubiquinol that I have in my store, but gladiator barley can be taken separately or with the boost. Now, gladiator barley or the heirloom barley has a little scooper. You take about, maybe 3-4 scoops. Some people take only 2. It's up to you, but this is about a month's supply. So you take these 2 together for breakfast or for lunch, you lose weight, and when you stack this, you're controlling your A1C levels. That means you're controlling diabetes or reducing the chances of developing diabetes. There's an awful lot of people in the United States that have diabetes. You want to solve that problem? Take these 2. All right. If you're like right on the edge to being pre-diabetic, take these 2 together, and you're going to lose weight and you're going to control your diabetes. Do some resistance training and you're going to gain some muscle too. All right. Very important. Now, some people don't want to take the gladiator barley and they prefer to take the heirloom barley. This does the same thing that the gladiator barley does, except it doesn't focus on the strength side of it. It does the detoxification just like the gladiator barley. It reduces inflammation just like the gladiator barley, and it soaks up free radicals with superoxide dismutase just like the gladiator barley. And the gladiator barley is more focused on strength. Okay. Now you can take them separately. You can take just the Boomer Boost for breakfast or lunch, or just the heirloom barley for breakfast or lunch. That's up to you, but it works better if you stack them together And when you stack them together, you can also control your A1C levels. So I have created a longevity boost box for the ones that want to stack them. You can buy them separately, that's up to you. But if you want to stack it, you can get a longevity boost box at a discount. I've designed the box where you get a discount if you buy the box. Now you get the Boomer Boost in that box and your choice of Gladiator barley or heirloom barley. And you can use discount 5 on top of that order. So it behooves you, if you want to really supercharge this stack, by taking the barley and the Boomer Boost together, buy the longevity box, and you get a discount, built-in discount in that box compared to buying the product separately, and you can use discount 5. So I've done everything I can to explain to you how to reduce diabetes, how to improve your cardiovascular health, how to improve your brain health, how to build more muscle and get stronger by just taking Gladiator barley and Boomer Boost. And believe me, the cost of these two together once a month is cheaper than your breakfast or lunch. And you're going to lose weight and get healthy. So that's how you use the products. Now, again, let me just reiterate. The core is a 4-pillar process. Max 35 or max 14, boost up your immune system. Second pillar, C60, soak up free radicals. The third pillar, bring down inflammation, turmeric, ashwagandha, lignans. And the fourth pillar, the Boomer Boost, to boost up energy levels in your metabolism. When you do all that, and you add some other stuff that I've been talking about, like the barley, like the nattokinase, like the D3, like the K2, MK7, when you do all that, you're really targeting and supercharging and slowing down that aging process, building up your immune system, improving your endocrine system. And there's these 2 points, these 2 inflection points in our life for most people where we age. At about age 35 or 40 is an inflection point, and another one is at age 65. So the big aging points in our life are those 2 points. And the more that you do to have high levels of energy and soaking up free radicals, the better off you are in going through those inflection points. So that means that if you're healthy and you do these protocols, when you go through that inflection point of 35 or 40 or about 65, 62 to 65, when you go through those periods of time, you're going to age slower. That means when you get through that, you're going to, between 45 and 65, you're going to be aging slower. So it's important to pay attention to these inflection points because there are switches that are taking place at your genomic level that your body is methylating differently. And it's a lot harder to unmethylate the signal than to just not have the methylation, right? So it's really important to pay attention to what I'm saying, because there's a lot of science to a lot of evidence. A lot of people have done, these kinds of stacks, and and people are seeing huge gains, right? There's another aspect to aging, and that is brain aging. And like I've been saying, it's really important once you're age 40 plus to start protecting your neurons and to activating those neurons. You activate neurons by moving around, getting good blood flow, having good nutrition, good supplementation like the ubiquinol and the NAD+, the C60, things that are protective for your neurons, the vitamin B complex. There are many supplements that help with neurons, and even the Boomer Boost. And learn new things, read, write, talk to people, all these different modalities, balancing, stretching, weight training. These are all activating neurons. Some of them are physical, some of them are more intellectual, but you're getting positive neuroplasticity and you're strengthening the connection. And when you strengthen that connection, that means it's stronger, carrying you into your geriatric years where you have less neurodegeneration. you're lowering the chances of neurodegeneration. And that's what you want to do, right? So periods of time where brain aging starts to kick in, there's a point around age 70, age 72 is a major inflection point where there's a big drop off. And I believe there's also another one around age, I think it's around the late 50s. I'd have to double check that one. But I think it's late 50s, and then around age 72, 73 is another inflection point for cognitive decline. All right, so the way your body ages, there's 2 inflection points, and then there's two other inflection points for brain aging. They're different. And just keep that in mind. And this is the reason why I keep on saying age 40 plus, you really need to start thinking about protecting your neurons through changing of lifestyle, moving around, doing exercises, and learning new things, and get that positive neuroplasticity going. It's really important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. My protocol works, it's something I do every day. And I want people healthy. In 2025, that's the goal, get healthy. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching the live stream on Rumble, the live stream on YouTube that had the dashboard of the market, and the ones that were listening on X Spaces. When I do these shows, you can do a call in on X Spaces and listen, or you can just ask for the mic and you can ask a question or give me your opinion on a subject matter that we're covering. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.